Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 3 Point Weekly. Today, we are going to be predicting the Eastern Conference standings, starting from the bottom and working our way up to the top. And it's a conference that we have found in our discussion before this podcast is going to be very, very difficult to rank this season. There is a ton of good teams in the East. No longer is the West significantly better than the East, so we're sure to have a ton of good debates about the Eastern Conference standings today. So be sure to leave your thoughts on our predictions down in the comments below. We'll get us started off with Tyrik this week with the 15th seed.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that point, I think like 1 through 13, maybe 1 through 14, like all those teams in the East have like some type of a chance, or maybe in their minds, of making the play-in. So very different from years in the past where like teams will win 37 games and make the playoffs in the East. But starting with 15, I think this is the worst team in the East. I think probably consensus. The Indiana Pacers, they hit the reset, and hopefully they do trade away Miles Turner, Buddy Hield, and anybody else that they can get assets for. And just the idea of Victor Wembanyama on the Pacers is a beautiful sight. Him and Tyrese would be deadly. So I hope they bottom out and win as few games as possible.
I'm sure we all have them at 15. I think, you just know. I think most of us knew like last week as well. It was like, yeah, this team is trying. They're trying to be bad, and it's very obvious. Every other team has at least something in place that's like, oh, we could be solid. We know Indiana's is going to be that 15 seed, I think, pretty convincingly.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's a lot of teams that are going to be pushing towards a tank type of mindset this year because of Victor, because of Scoot Henderson, but Indiana, the only team that clearly looks like that to start the year in the Eastern Conference. So they were my easy pick at 15. They were probably the only easy pick for me on this list. I'm gonna move on to 14. At 14, I have the Charlotte Hornets.
Okay.
Which is not exactly where I would have thought I was going to have them 6 months ago, but unfortunately, it's due to circumstances outside of their control with Miles Bridges and the lack of good decisions this offseason, the lack of hiring a good head coach. I think they're going to tumble down a little bit here. LaMelo Ball is the one and sole reason that they could end up finishing higher in the Eastern Conference, but Gordon Hayward's probably only going to play half the season. Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball is going to be good for you offensively, but not great. They still don't have a great center, although they did draft Mark Williams. How productive he is and how much he actually plays is a whole other question. So there's upside for them to be better here. They could reach as high as the play-in tournament if all really goes well for them when LaMelo Ball breaks out and starts averaging 26 a night. But I have them at the 14 seed.
So do I. Pretty much most of the reasons you just said, like, they lost their second best player, who was a big part of their success last year. And at that point, they were still only like okay, we'll make the play-in and get absolutely destroyed in the play-in game level team. And so the fact that they hired probably a worse head coach for their situation, lost that second best player, among other things, is not making it look good for them this season.
Yeah, I'll talk about them in a second. Devin's going to hate this, and I actually hate it too. I got the Magic at 14, and I absolutely don't like it at all. So I think they're better than that, but I believe they're like a year away from really like being considered a legitimate playoff threat. I think they're about a year away. As good as that roster is, like with young talent, still think they need a year of grooming. It's only Jamal Mosley's second year as a head coach. They're going to have to integrate Paolo as, potentially being their best offensive player right away. So that might take a little bit of time and everything. And, they're missing guys to start the season like Markelle, who I think can be a big part of what this team wants to do. I just think this is fine for them because if they do bottom out, you have a chance to get a top pick just to add to that pool of young talent. And if they do somehow, maybe get a 10 seed, that would be considered a very good season for them. So I think either way, the season will be a win-win for the Magic, just as long as their young talent continues to grow.
Yeah, like you say, if there's a year for Orlando to not fully commit to winning yet and to pushing for a play-in tournament spot, this would be the year. When you talk about having Franz and Paolo and potentially a really good pick in this year's draft, and this core is going to be absolutely outrageous. I'll touch more on their upside a little bit later where I have them on my list, but there's definitely an argument to say, yeah, you know what, maybe we just try and give ourselves better lottery luck this year. Definitely.
Yeah. I'll go ahead with my 13 though, because I have the Hornets. Like ideally, I would want them to be, where you guys had them at 14, because getting a top pick would be very good for them for like the state of this team right now. But I still think right now they have a little too much talent that can actually win games. And Steve Clifford's not a coach that is probably gonna, push his chips to lose games. We've just seen him in the past. Like he will play the veterans if he has to win games. Like I can't trust them to bottom out. Ideally I would want them to, but I just can't see that happening. And I think LaMelo might take a jump this year. I think this is going to be the big year for him to, truly be an all-star, not like a replacement guy or what he was last year, like truly be that all-star guy. So looking for him to have a big year, and that could be enough to push them to, the 13th seed if that's worth anything.
Yeah, I mean, they do have that talent. I just think it seems like they're sort of set up for a nightmarish season just with all the things going on around the peripheral. So it's like, while the talent is there, a little bit lower. It kind of ties into my number 13, where it's like they've got some talent, but I just don't see them being very good. Might be a little bit of a surprise. I've got the Knicks at 13. And this bottom couple of teams on my list were like, they were all really sort of funneling around, and I definitely changed some locations a couple times. But I just look at the makeup of this team, and I'm like, Julius Randle situation is still a little awkward. And we keep talking about like, oh, he can find a middle ground between like the good Julius Randle and the bad Julius Randle. But it's still like, as this team moves more to RJ's team, will that end up like going well for them? Like, will he get back to a good point? Will he like that? And that's like a whole kind of baggage situation at that point. And then it's like, looking at the rest of the roster, there's some like solid pieces, but not really a lot of needle movers. And I think to a certain point, I just look at the other rosters around the conference, and I'm like, there's something there that's like, okay, I think that's going to win them a solid amount of games. Or maybe there's some guy that'll break out, they have some young talent, and like halfway through the season, then they turn it up. But I just look at this Knicks team, and I'm like, there's just nothing that really pushes them that far for me. I don't know. It's like, it's really close between all of my like 14 to 11. So they landed here, but I can see why you guys might have them a little bit higher.
I have them higher for sure.
Yeah, me too. I definitely do not have them here. I will discuss that upside a few picks down the road. Definitely a bit lower than I am on them for sure.
Okay. Knicks at 13. Okay.
First hot take of the video.
That is a bit of a hot take.
Is it hot? It's like lukewarm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's crazy hot, but like at the same time, I feel like I've seen a lot more people putting them at 9 or 8 or 7 than I am at 13.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I don't know. I feel like having the Magic at 14 was kind of like I didn't want to do it. Like, I really did not want to.
Yeah, I feel like that might be more influenced by me, though, than by general consensus.
Maybe, but I really love what the Magic are doing, too. So it's like, to have them so low, it's just like, I didn't like it. It kind of hurt me a little bit on the inside, not going to lie.
Yeah, it's a good team, but there's definitely an argument for them being 1 year away still, especially like you said, with them having a few injuries coming into the season. 13 was where I had the Wizards.
Okay.
Beal and Porzingis is going to be an interesting duo. Outside of that, they have pieces. How much that contributes to winning, I don't know. I like the Monte Morris addition. They needed a point guard. I think that's a good addition. I think Will Barton can give them a few buckets. Kyle Kuzma is going to give them a few buckets. I think Rui Hachimura is going to take a step forward this year after missing a good portion of the start of last season. I expect him to take a bit of a jump. But all in all, I don't know how the pieces really fit here. And this isn't to say that Washington's a bad team. They could still win like 33, 35 games and end up here. But it's going to be tight. They have a chance at the play-in tournament, but I'm not sold on what they're building here as a unit. So I put them at 13.
Okay.
All right. So on to 12, right?
Yes.
All right, I've got a repeat team, so I'll go ahead and bring it out. This is where I've got Orlando. I think it is really close between them and the Knicks. I just think, as I was kind of talking about, like what's going to put them over the edge, I think the pieces that Orlando has a little bit more boom potential. You've got Franz, you've got Paolo, and we saw last year that we had a couple rookies break out and really be impact players off the bat. So if Paolo comes out, he's as good as they were, which I think is very possible. That'll give them a couple extra wins. Obviously, Devin's talked plenty about the Wendell Carter impact. And so it's just a little bit more going on in that roster, and I feel like I see a little bit more upside. I think in a lot of my picks, I'm like, oh, this team will start out okay and get better as the season progresses. And I don't know if New York's going to do that, but I feel like Orlando has a pretty solid chance at it. Plus, they've got a lot of their pieces. I think at this point, the path forward for this team, while they can still get a solid pick once again, I think that the next step for them is to start that internal improvement and really take this core that they've built. It's honestly really solid and start to put it together.
Yeah, I think another thing about Orlando is like if we get into like January, maybe early February, and they're like not as good as maybe they had hoped, we could easily see them just start tanking right there because we'll probably talk about this draft class a lot this episode, but with what we've seen from Victor, from Scoot, and I know a lot of the other prospects are supposed to be like highly touted as well. Teams are going to start, slowly sitting guys, saying guys are hurt, taking, nights off and stuff. We're going to start seeing that pretty early this year, man, because those top picks are going to be very, very coveted.
Yeah, they definitely will be. And when you talk about Orlando being limited this year, they're already going into this year with potentially having two of their starting guards, at least projected starting guards, being out on opening day. So it could be an uphill battle for them that does lead to that being a possibility.
Definitely. We're at 12, right?
We are at 12.
Yes.
I got a repeat team. So the Wizards, they have the top end talent to, at their best, I think the best possible outcome for them is like a 10 seed. I think that's really like their ceiling, and that's if everything goes right for them. Brad Beal's great. We know what he can do. One of the best offensive two guards in the league. If you can get a full season, what Porzingis was doing last year, like just without, missing time due to injury, because he was pretty good when he got to Washington. He was playing some pretty solid basketball, some of the best that we've seen in quite a while. They got those two guys, and they have like quality supporting pieces. I like Denny. I like Rui Hachimura when he's on the court. I'm a big fan of Monte Morris. Him as a starter, in the situation outside of Denver is going to be a little intriguing to see. But like you said, Devin, like nothing else about this team moves me at all. Like, I don't think Wes Unseld Jr. is like a bad coach or anything. It's just like we talked about them a lot. They're in probably one of the worst situations as an organization right now because, like I just said, their best outcome is like a 10 seed, and that's just not where you want to be. You either want to be trying to be a legitimate playoff team or just bottom out, rebuilding. And from the looks of it, I mean, Brad Beal has a no trade clause, a 5-year, $57 million, like making so much money over the course of those 5 years. So it's like they're just in a weird spot, and I can't push them any higher than a 12 seed, man.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the biggest limiting factor here is they don't have that piece that you can look at and say, here's the upside. Here's how I could see them making a big jump and moving up to more than like an 11 or a 10 seed in the standings. They don't have that. Like, we know what Beal is. We know what Porzingis can be at his best. And no one else in this roster really looks like they have that in them to take that jump. Maybe it happens, but it definitely doesn't seem likely.
Nah, and like even they drafted Johnny Davis. He plays Bradley Beal's position. So it's like, how is he going to be able to grow? They're just in such a weird spot. Like they are now what the Pacers were doing and what the Trailblazers have been doing. And even like the Utah Jazz are just in that spot where it's like, it's about to be the same thing year after year with this current core.
Yeah, definitely. Number 12 is where I have the Detroit Pistons. I really like what they have done, as we've talked about over the last couple of years, leading up to the season with the acquisition of Bogdanovich for virtually nothing. The biggest thing that holds me back when I look at this team is what is going to go on with their bench, because their starting five is like really nice. Cade and Ivy is going to be a fun fit. Saddiq Bey looks to continue to improve. He's had a really good first couple of years in the league, but Donovich is going to add a nice bit of spacing and secondary creation on this team. And then between Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren at the center position, they got some good activity there. But where does their creation come from the bench? In an ideal world, I was expecting Bogdanovich to start, but it would have been probably better if he came off of the bench just for a little bit more shot creation. It doesn't seem as though that's going to be the case because now is Alec Burks going to be your guy? Is Killian Hayes going to be your guy and take that breakout? If he does, great, but you're kind of banking on that because now otherwise you're looking at Marvin Bagley, who had a good year last year, but now isn't going to be fed by Cade. He's going to be fed by Killian Hayes and Alec Burks. So I am a little bit concerned about that bench unit. I think they have one of the worst bench units in these few bottom teams in the conference, and that is what worries me. They could definitely make a jump to the play-in if Ivy has a good rookie season, if Cade takes a jump, if Saddiq Bey takes a jump. But that bench is what worries me right now. So that's what holds me from putting them anything higher, and I put them at the 12th seed.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean by that. Like the lack of depth can be a little jarring, especially if somebody goes out because every team deals with bumps and bruises along an 82-game season. A lot of time to go. And so definitely a very fair point. I do think some teams can make a little bit of a push without that depth, but then being so young, who knows if they're ready for that yet. So really either way you feel on them, I think is completely fair.
Yeah, that's usually teams with like super top end talent. But even like we saw the Brooklyn Nets last year, once, Kyrie wasn't playing and KD went down, they were playing guys that, we had never heard of. And they were trying to win games that way. And they went on like a 10-game losing streak because of that. So that's a very good point. Like I definitely see what you're saying. It's like their 8-man rotation is probably like very good. But then, like you said, Gabe, if somebody goes down, God forbid, like a Cade gets injured or, Jaden Ivey, they're going to be severely lacking for sure. And that's a middle tier team. They can't really afford that to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, 11.
I'll move on to 11, I guess. So I've got Washington here. They've already been talked about a little bit. I just think this team, when I look at it, the 4 teams below them, I think have a solid reason to want to get a top pick. I think obviously Indiana, like super obvious. Charlotte, I think they need a top pick to come in and sort of add to. They have LaMelo, but not a whole lot of other great things happening. Then Orlando, you can see why they would want to bottom out if things aren't going well about halfway through the season. And then I know you guys are higher on New York, but I do think this is a team that has some, like I said, some solid pieces. But I do think it would be almost in their best interest to try and enter that sweepstakes and really get that guy who can be a true superstar player for them and sort of revitalize the franchise. Because the team forever has plenty of solid pieces and then is like, oh, we're going to sign this free agent. Usually doesn't work out that way. I know they got Brunson, but his impact as a pure needle mover, as he'll probably be second, third option on that team. We'll see how that ends up working out. But regardless, to just kind of finish up that point, there's a world where they would want that top pick. I get to Washington, and they locked in Beal for this big-time money. They brought in Porzingis. Their draft pick was an older guy, so obviously they didn't want sort of a younger potential project to sort of develop. Brought in Monte Morris, who is a top backup. Have Kyle Kuzma, who came in pretty well. He was pretty good for them last year, but I think he's pretty close to what his ceiling is. And it's like this team kind of looks like they're trying to win, and they're just not going to be very good at it. But this is a team where I just don't see a world where they just start trying to lose to get that better pick, because that's not what they're built for. They don't have the flexibility to really rebuild. It doesn't seem like the direction of this franchise is trying to rebuild. And for that purpose, I kind of unfortunately have them this high.
Didn't we look up their attendance in like one of our previous podcasts, and they were like the worst in the league?
It was very bad. I want to say it was around 12,000 a game last year.
Right. Because I was saying that maybe they had kept Beal for that like ticket sales and to get some interest in the franchise, but then you guys looked it up and they were last anyways.
I guess Beal's about to be like their Kobe Bryant, just without the rings, man. A no trade clause is crazy. I didn't know until I watched Devin's video about the Wizards that there's only been like 10 guys in NBA history with no trade clause or something like that, and Bradley Beal's one of them.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
Him, Carmelo, LeBron. That's crazy.
I don't even know. Did Bron have? I don't think
Bron had one in an earlier contract. Yeah,
okay.
I don't remember what it was, but he did have one at some point.
KG.
I thought Bron did when he went back to Cleveland. But if he didn't, maybe it's just they didn't trade him because he had all them 1+1s. I mean, obviously they were going to trade him anyways,
maybe.
But
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Those 1+1s are basically his no trade clause because his contract was about to be up anyways.
Yeah, pretty much. Just to be clear on that point on the Wizards, their attendance was 15,500 per game last year, but they were at the lowest average percentage of capacity filled at 76%. No one else was below 80% in the league.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's not good.
Definitely not ideal. Hopefully the duo of Beal and Porzingis can drum up a bit of interest, but
we'll see.
Definitely an interesting direction there.
They let me down
70
last
mil
year,
combined
man.
is crazy.
I was talking
They
crazy
make
about
70
last season.
76 mil combined for those two players. And one of them might borderline top 20, and the other one is like cool.
Bradley Beal's not top 20.
That's what I mean. 76 mil combined for those two players.
I don't even know if he's top 25.
Yeah.
No disrespect.
He might not be at this point.
Bradley Beal's
I had a notoriously low.
He's a bucket, but
We
we
did an episode on the top shooting guards, and you guys saw where I had Bradley Beal on that. So.
I don't remember where I had him, but I know he was. I don't think he was top 5 on my list.
I don't believe he was.
I think I had him at like 9, like 8.
Beal was placed at 9, 8, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sounds about right.
So
yeah,
he has a chance to raise the stock this year if he can stay healthy the entire season and get them in the play-in. But
they're in purgatory.
I love his offensive game. Like, just he's very crafty, such a smooth bucket. But it's like he's not a number one option. Like, he would be best maybe as a number 2, but even if he was your number 3, he would be elite at that. Like, but if he's your number 1, this is what your franchise looks like. You know, you're in purgatory, and that's where they are.
He was a good number 2. He was like those Wizards teams where Wall was running the show, and he was the solid number 2 option. Like, those supporting casts were cool, but they weren't nothing crazy, and those teams were competitive. Obviously,
they just had guys that did their
finals
role.
at their peak.
Yeah,
right. So it's like, if Beal's your second option, you can be a pretty damn good team. But him as your first option, clearly you cannot.
Made the playoffs once since John Wall's been hurt.
That was a Russ. The Russ year they made it. That was it.
Okay. I just made a last-second change.
Okay.
I did. I got Detroit at 11.
He kicked them out of the play-in, man.
Kicked him out of the play-in, man. I got Detroit at 11. The more I got to thinking, I feel like they might be also a year away, even though they made some really good moves this offseason, had an amazing offseason. I'm one of the biggest Cade fans in the world. Like, I love Cade Cunningham's game. I think I'm big on Jaden Ivey too. And I love everything they did. Bogdanovich move was great. Getting Alec Burks was a really good move. But Devin brought us some really good points. Like, they're kind of thin in the back end of their rotation, which as a young team, you kind of need those guys. You know, you never know when you might need somebody to come off the bench, because they had guys last year that would sometimes come off the bench and give them very good minutes, like a Kelly Olynyk, or even like Saban Lee would have some like good games for them off their bench. They don't really have that this year, and it will take some really big steps from Cade, which I think he will take a step forward, but I don't think it's going to be like an all-star jump. I still think, he needs some time for that. But I think even if they finish in this spot, if they're battling for the play-in, that is a very, very good season for them. And the fact that I have them at 11 and I just moved them down, they have a chance to make it. And I'm very confident that they probably could, but the team I have at 10, I think I'm a little bit more lenient towards them, just like very slightly. Ask me in like a week, I might say Detroit at 10, but
All right, man. Y'all kind of fraudulent towards Detroit basketball, man. I'm just saying.
Man,
But
I love Detroit basketball, man. I love them. If they were playing the Celtics and the Raptors every night, they might be the best team in basketball.
Big facts. Big facts.
They're going
Casey
80 they're
loves
going
to get off
82
for a
and
game
0.
against the Raps.
Legit.
82 and 0.
No doubt. No doubt. But yeah, considering they started this rebuild a couple of years ago with their asset trade away to Kickstarter being the trading away of Luke Kennard, they have done very, very well to get where they are now. So the fact that they're in play-in contention already is definitely a good sign.
Definitely.
I wanted to put Orlando at 10. I really did.
I know you did.
but I couldn't do it. Too many injuries to start the year is scaring me. Fultz is unknown to start things off. Jalen Suggs' status is now unknown. Jonathan Isaac, we have no idea when he's going to come back at this point. I've given up on trying to figure it out. Point being is they were borderline to be a play-in team as it is, and now they're going to be struggling with injuries with some guys who have had a bit of injury history to start the year, which isn't exactly that welcoming to putting them as a 10 seed. I think they have a chance, but those injuries scare me, and who they're now going to have a guard scares me because RJ Hampton might be starting at the guard position day one, and that is a little bit concerning to me given his production last season. I love their wings. I love Wendell Carter Jr. I think this is a team that if they don't get in this year, then they're probably a play-in team next year, barring a jump from Detroit and three other teams below them, which isn't completely out of the question, so who knows. But I really like the direction of Orlando. I think they got a shot at making the play-in, but unfortunately, I got to put them just outside of it.
All these
I was
narratives.
expecting them at 10. I was expecting them at 10.
All these narratives. This is the guy pushing Detroit basketball had them outside the play-in, and the guy that's been pushing Wendell and the Magic all summer has them outside the play-in.
I
couldn't
will
even
say
have them
this.
sneak in, man.
I will
Couldn't
say
even have them
this.
sneak in.
Before the injuries and the reports of that came down in the last week, Orlando were at 10. Since the injury news, they have been bumped down to 11. So,
me personally, I think I've seen it too many times, like a young team that's been bad, and then there's a lot of hype surrounding them. Like, okay, yeah, they got to make the playoffs or the play-in now. We've seen it happen before. Like the Pelicans was that team, like Zion's first full season. People were like, yeah, they can make the play-in. Ended up disappointing. We see it happen time and time again. Too smart to fall for it this time. I think the Pistons are going to be really good for their standards, but I think they will just slightly miss out on the play-in. Like maybe it might be like the last day of the season, they lose a game and they don't get in. That's how it could work. But yeah, I don't want to jump the gun on a young team, putting too much pressure on them.
Yeah, a lot of these big jumps from young teams seem to be unexpected or the unpopular pick. You look at Cleveland last year, like some people are like, oh, maybe they'll be decent and make like an 11 seed or a 12 seed. And I was like, oh, no, never mind. We'll be a playoff team, barring injuries, they would have been. And similar to Memphis. I mean, everyone knew like, oh, Memphis is good, but they might be slightly worse last year. No, we'll just go hang out and be the 2 seed real quick. So it seems to be like with a lot of those jumps, it is unexpected. So Detroit and Orlando might be a team next year where, yeah, sure, they might have a little bit more expectations, and then one of them will just jump up and be a 5 seed out of nowhere. Might not happen, but that's typically the type of jumps that we have been used to seeing. So, as you said, to piggyback off of your point, this year might not be the year when expectations are growing for them, but they're both definitely moving in the right direction.
Definitely. I'm wondering
Top
who Gabe's
10.
10 seed is.
Top 10.
Gabe's 10?
Go ahead, start, Gabe, because I'm really wondering who your 10 seed is.
Hey, so okay, well, so obviously I'm the only one out of the three of us that did not have the Knicks making the play-in. I just do not believe in New York basketball. That being said, we just talked about it. One of these teams is going to make a jump, and Detroit basketball is making my play-in tournament. Yeah, okay. I'm just like I'm looking at this roster construction, and I feel like it's just enough. I think like Bojan is a guy who has some decent moments. Like he's real decent as like a high value starter. And then bringing him in, I'm like, okay, this team is trying to win games. Especially even if everything doesn't go according to plan, like my exact 1 through 15 rankings, some team is going to get like the injury bug or something, or somebody's going to go down. And I think Detroit will be the team to capitalize, and they'll take that nice little last spot in there, get a taste of some postseason basketball, and it'll be fun. I think Cade, he can spread the ball out. Jaden Ivey, he's going to come in. I think he'll be a pretty good guard off the bat. Might have a little bit of struggles, but I think he'll figure it out at least by All-Star break. And that being said, yeah, their depth isn't great, but I think both of those two guys are used to being a lead guard. And so they can totally stagger minutes, and like the backup bigs can still totally get some looks from those guys, even if they're not playing all together. I don't know if they're going to consistently just run, here's our starting 5 and here's our bench 5. I think they can mix it up and have some solid things going on. And then I think just a lot of the guys on the roster, like a Corey Joseph, like a Kevin Knox, like a Nerlens Noel, they can come in and do like just enough. Just enough. I'm not expecting a ton, not expecting anything crazy. I don't even know if they'll be in the solid rotation the entire season. Like Corey Joseph, maybe he doesn't get minutes if Killian Hayes is doing cool. I don't know. But I think their backup pieces will do just enough to get them to that 10 seed with some really solid play, some exciting play from their good young core.
You're doing my job better than I am. You are. I agree with everything you just said, man. I think I would bet more on the young team finding a way to miss the play-in than the Knicks, because the Knicks have more veteran pieces. They made moves in the offseason to at least try and get back to this point. So I'll go ahead and dive into 10. The New York Knicks. I don't know why. But it's something about the energy. Like when I've seen what I've seen in the preseason, what I've heard, like them talking to the media, their media day, just seeing Derrick Rose, happy, smiling. I don't know what it is. Like, it just seems like the energy is different this year. And I'm expecting a very solid year from them, man. I think this team has really good talent. Like you said earlier, Gabe, they don't really have like big needle movers, but I think they have enough collectively to win some games, to get back to playing some really good defensive basketball. And I think Julius Randle's going to be able to I think he's going to get to that spot where we were talking about a few episodes ago, like where, it's not the all-NBA guy, but it's better than it was last year, even though statistically it might not be as good. I think he'll get to that point because he kind of knows, like, I have to be that for, this team to be good and for me to be, even an acceptable NBA player now. And I'm expecting a big jump from RJ. He just got his payday, which was, I think, well-deserved. And I like the surrounding pieces, man. You got Quickly now who should be coming off the bench. Could be one of the most, like, a dark horse six-man guy. Derrick Rose back healthy, hopefully, so that should be another added piece. Mitchell Robinson got paid. You got Isaiah Hartenstein coming in. They got pieces. They got a lot of pieces. Obi Toppin, if he can build off what he did at the end of last season, he's another added weapon to this team, man. They got a lot of different options, a lot of different lineups that they can run. And Tibbs is going to get the most out of this team. He's going to get the most out of this team. So I think they can make a 10 seed and maybe even make some noise in the play-in. You never know.
Yeah, this is also where I have the Knicks as well. I think the biggest thing that makes me feel more confident about this Knicks team than last year was they didn't have a point guard for the large portion of last season. I mean, we saw Kemba Walker in for a bit, and then he was out of the lineup, and then he was in the lineup, and he was hit and miss. Then Alex Burks was your starting point guard for a while, which not ideal. And then Derrick Rose missed a majority of the season. Like, Barrett and Randall did not have a true point guard to get their offense from and get easier looks from last year. That just wasn't a thing. There was Emmanuel Quickley, who was fine, but definitely didn't take as big of a jump in year two as some people had hoped for. And that was really it for the entire season. Now you have Rose back healthy, who can hopefully stay healthy. You've brought in Jalen Brunson. I think the offense is going to become a lot easier for RJ Barrett and Julius Randle to get. I think the Isaiah Hartenstein acquisition is very underrated. I think he's going to fit into that second unit very well and create more offense for them. He's a very underrated passer. I think Obi Toppin, with his good cutting, is going to be able to get some offense from that as well. Some more jumps from the young guys is going to be important. Obi Toppin being one of them, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes. Those guys are going to have to become important parts of the rotation even more so this year. But I think the addition of Jalen Brunson and having a true steady point guard who can drop 18 to 20 points a night and can create offense more easily for their wings, I think it's going to make life a lot easier for those guys. And I think it should make them a little bit better this year to be able to push into the play-in tournament.
Well said. I think people are kind of sleeping on the Knicks a little bit because they made fun of the Jalen Brunson, like, oh, he got way too much money, which I don't really think is the case. And just based off of last season, because it's always an NBA fan thing to just laugh at the Knicks, to laugh at the Lakers. But I think the Knicks made the necessary moves. And like you said, if they can get those jumps from their young guys, it's a team that can be, not scary, but they can make a little bit of noise, like potentially push for a playoff spot even. Like, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility at all.
Yeah, honestly, you guys do make some real good points. Like I said, when I'm crafting my list, I mean, I had the Knicks in higher spots. People kept flipping spots, and if the Knicks do end up taking the 10 seed, I'll take my L. I'll take my L right on the chest. I think they're gonna make it? I don't know. It's just always something with that team, but they do have some pieces. They had a solid offseason, and it's just like a lot of teams had a solid offseason. So whoever doesn't make the cut is hard. I do think we do see a clear divide, and I think everybody who tracks NBA discourse knows there's 9 teams in the East that everybody's talking about, and it's always the classic, which one of these 9 teams isn't going to make the playoffs? And so I think this next spot is honestly going to be it could go one of two ways. Either this is going to be really interesting and we're going to have different teams miss the playoffs, or we're all just going to say, okay, one of these 9 teams is going to miss the playoffs. But yeah. I think
I think so.
I'm just going to – I don't even want to – I'm not – if you guys all have the same team, I'm just going to say it and then tell me if you guys have the same team. My number 9 is Chicago.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Okay. It's really Lonzo Ball. That's the big thing for me. We saw how they look without him last season, and if he's unknown right now, we don't know if he'll be back this year at all. That's scary, man. That's scary. Like, Goran Dragic does not move the needle enough for me. I love Caruso, but even him, DeSumo getting a lot more. Lonzo was so key for them when he was on the floor, and they fell off a cliff defensively when he was out. Can't trust him without him.
Yeah. I mean, to start the year, the expectation was Chicago's going to be really good offensively, but how are they going to hold up defensively? And they ended up being okay offensively and really good defensively. And that, like you said, that just wasn't the case once Lonzo went out with his injury. He helped their transition game a lot. He helped add a lot more spacing to their offense, and he was shooting very well from 3 last year. So you lose a lot with Lonzo not being in this team. Hopefully he can get back healthy at some point, but I believe the timeline for his latest knee surgery was 3 months. So him missing that much of the season, like you said, for me too, is also the biggest reason why I can't put Chicago any higher than 9. No one else above them has, at least to start the season, such a key player out for multiple months.
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off you guys, it's like not only did they fall off defensively, but they just fell off in general at the end of the season. It was between them and Cleveland last year to see who can end this season worse. Chicago ended up pulling through and making the playoffs last year, but just by the skin of their teeth, and they did not hold up very well there. And really, I don't think they did enough this offseason to really remedy that. Obviously, Lonzo, who knows when he's going to be back. He was talking about not just it hurts to play basketball, but it hurts to walk up the stairs. If that's the guy you want to be playing basketball at the highest level on earth soon, you're probably mistaken. I think it's going to be a minute for him. And then, yeah, everything else surrounding this team's discourse is last year, the main duct tape holding this team together as it was falling apart was a 33-year-old player playing at a career best level. Can he replicate that? I personally am not sure. I think he can still obviously be an all-star next year, but it's going to be incredibly hard to replicate what he did then. And even like I said, that was just duct tape holding things together at the end while they were sinking. So yeah, future does not look too bright in Chicago.
And DeMar was the best fourth quarter player in basketball. So he won a lot of games for them in the final minutes of games. And it's he had to do a lot. Obviously, I think Zach LaVine's going to be better, but it's almost common sense to expect some type of regression from DeMar. But even outside of that, they made some okay moves this offseason. Like the Drummond move was cool. Getting Dragic for cheap, I guess, was okay. But it's like nothing else they did or could have done like moves us, especially with Lonzo's injury. Patrick Williams is kind of like, I think he's been coming off the bench in the preseason. Even like Javonte Green's been getting the starter minutes. So you want to see him to be able to take a jump. But is that going to happen this year? Is the idea of Patrick Williams not the reality? Who knows? Like, so just too many question marks for me to move them above anybody else that's in front of them.
Yeah, like you say, there's just more question marks here for any other team. And I think Patrick Williams has to take that jump for them to reach the spot where they can get into the other top 8 teams in the East. But I'm not buying it. Hopefully Lonzo can get back healthy, and towards the end of the year, we can see how effective this Chicago Bulls group can be. But because of that injury, I can't put them any higher.
Definitely. So I guess the interesting question then goes from which of these 9 is going to make the playoffs to just what's this order going to be? Because we have the same 8. We have the same 8.
I feel
so
like
nothing too crazy wild. No wild team jumping and making the playoffs for us. It looks like we all went pretty safe here.
I don't know. I feel like me and Devin might have similar lists.
I'm going to be honest. I don't know if anyone's going to have a list similar to me, but we'll see.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
Hey, we'll see. I think I don't know. I think my takes make sense, but I can see why somebody would disagree with them. There's a reason why. I mean, everybody knows these teams are all going to be good. That's been one of the biggest points of hype.
Stand on your takes. Stand on your takes, man. If you got the Celtics at the AC, stand on it.
I can tell you I do not have the Celtics at the 8th seed. But I will stand on the Celtics not being the 8th seed. What's crazy is you're talking about the Celtics being at the 8th seed. I got the Raptors at the 8th seed.
Me too.
I got the Raptors at okay. So we all have the same 8th seed as well?
Yes, we do.
Similar list. Okay, yeah. I guess I'll just start this time since I went last on the Bulls. Toronto's a really solid team, a really solid cast. Everybody else just has like a little bit more that has me like, okay, if this team and the Raptors are playing against each other in a 1-game series, I have more trust in player X to pull out this game than somebody on the Raptors. And it's like so much talent, really great cast. I think it needs like one more year of Scottie development for him to maybe take control, become like a high-level star, and then maybe the Raptors are rolling again. Maybe a little bit of retooling. So much talent. I think obviously you're just running it back with pretty much the same lineups as last year. And, I mean, that got them to like a 5 seed, but they ended the season really strong as a couple of teams around them were just completely falling apart. Thinking that those Bolivarts don't happen this year, this team was really playing it around like a 7-8 seed level for most of the season. So I got them there.
That's fair. I love the roster. Obviously, I had Pascal higher on the power forwards list than you guys did. I'm a big Gary Trent fan. I love Freddie. Scotty's going to be a superstar in this league. But, man, and Nick Nurse is an amazing coach too, but it's just like I just think the teams above them are just more talented. They're more deep. I just think they're better. I just really do. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors did overachieve once again because they just seem like that team that's, kind of accustomed to doing that. But when I'm looking at it on paper, talent-wise, I just think out of the 8 teams that we have remaining on our list, they are just talent-wise the worst, which is not, a slight at them. It's just fact of the matter. And I can't see them, like, being any higher. Like, if everything goes ideally for each team, like how we look at them, an 8 seed is just as high as I can put the Raptors. Maybe a 7, maybe, but that's as high as I can go.
Yeah, like you say, on paper, this is probably about as high as you can put the Raptors. But also, like you say, they do tend to overachieve, so it wouldn't be shocking if they do move up a few seeds. The one thing that the Raptors do have to their advantage for regular season performance is, sure, Siakam compared to the number 1 guys of a lot of other guys across the top of the Eastern Conference is not as good, but Then you have Gary, who can give you points, Freddie, who can give you points, OG, who can drop 15 plus on any given night, and Scotty, who can give you a ton of points. So all 5 starters can give you really good production on any given night. And when you start dealing with injuries, that's the type of thing that can give them a few extra wins during the regular season, which could bump them up a bit. But it's really just a matter of internal development here. Like you said, Gabe, Scotty needs to develop more. I think Achua is set for a bigger season, but he just needs to continue to develop on both ends of the floor. But when I just look at this team compared to the other 7 teams, like you guys said, this just doesn't look like they're better than the other 7. That being said, it is the Raptors, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them finish up a few seeds higher. But talent-wise, on paper, this is where I'm putting them.
I totally agree with that. I think just the kind of injury-proof thing, like every team usually goes through bumps and bruises. Players are going to miss some games. This player might be out for like 10 games here, and then another player's out for like 8 games here. And there's some other teams above them where it's like, oh, this guy's out for 8 games. They might drop like a lot of those. The Raptors are like, oh, this guy's going to be out for 2 weeks. That's fine. We'll just slide up like our 6-man into the starting lineup, and like every player on this team's the exact same height. So they just slide in and it's cool. And so, yeah, since we can't really predict for those players to be missing like 3-week stretches and things like that, I can't really put them higher due to the nature of ranking, but because of that does make them super prone to overachieving, like you guys said.
Yeah, being able to have Otto Porter or Precious Achua just slide into your starting lineup because of injury is definitely a nice luxury to have. But after those guys, gets a little bit more concerning. One of the biggest concerns with this bench is just shooting. Who's going to actually hit shots from the perimeter outside of Otto Porter? That is a question. So definitely going to be some question marks offensively in the half court from this team. As we know, they're going to be a good defensive team, but they're going to lose some games because of poor shooting night, specifically from their bench unit, and that's going to be one of the biggest things that holds them back.
No trust in Boucher?
He needs to not shoot poorly for 3 months of the season. He looked better towards the end of last year, but he ain't going on a list with Otto Porter right now. I'll say that much.
That's fair. Very anticlimactic, man. We just put all this stock into the 9 and 8 seeds, and we got all the same teams.
That's okay. 7 seed, I am betting on some differences because I would be shocked if Gabe has this team here. So you go ahead, Gabe.
At 7, this is about to be wild because I was thinking that we might have the same team at 7. I have Brooklyn. Have we made a change? Is there a difference?
I do not have Brooklyn. I did not have Brooklyn.
Okay. Fine.
There's a difference.
So, Brooklyn at 7, it's like this team is so talented. I think point A, this team is probably looking more towards the playoffs, and I think that might lead to some oversight in some regular season games. And also, how many games are these guys playing? Ben Simmons didn't play at all last year, so I think expecting 82 out of him is kind of absurd. Kevin Durant has not been an 82-game guy for a while. Kyrie, obviously, throughout the past couple of years, his timeout has not always been due to injury, but even before, like, the pandemic era NBA and going forward, he was still prone to miss stretches. Obviously, there was that Boston year where he missed the whole playoffs, some other things. Kind of always been a guy that's in and out, pretty well known. So it's like, while you can't bet on catastrophic injuries, I can bet on the Brooklyn Nets to not be 100% for probably like 60% of the year. So I think that's going to make them drop quite a few games, especially because while they did add some depth and some more pieces, still not the greatest for missing like a Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving level player for a significant stretch. I think a lot of their defense is also going to rely on Ben Simmons. And since he's probably going to miss a lot of games too, coming off of a year-long injury, that's going to lead to a lot of nights where they're giving up a lot of points. So even then, maybe KD, Kyrie are playing, but they just can't get enough stops to win a game. And so this team has a lot of talent, and that's why they couldn't go anywhere below this. But I think just too many question marks with this roster, too many question marks to figure out. And so they're at 7.
That's fair. That is fair. Good points, too. My 7 seed, team that made a big trade in the offseason, the Atlanta Hawks. That is my 7th seed. I still have questions, man. Like, on paper, they should be better defensively, but I'm still not sure if they will be, just because this team has consistently been one of the lesser defensive teams in the league, and that's why you make the DeJounte trade, is so you have better backcourt or guard defenders, which he should be at. They've looked cool in the preseason, but it's still going to be, I think, a little bit of an adjustment period watching these two guys, learning to play off the ball more frequently, especially Trae Young, because he hasn't done it at the NBA level consistently and probably hasn't done it maybe ever, as far as we know. So it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And like you said about the Brooklyn Nets, like, I can expect guys for the Hawks to potentially miss time too. Like, DeAndre Hunter is going to be a big part of this team. He has not played a full season yet, or not even close to a full season. He always misses a big chunk of the year, and that's a very important piece for them. Clint Capella, last time we saw him on the floor, he didn't look, healthy at all, really, all last season. So, what's his health going to be? Even though we know Onyeka Okongwu is going to be a big piece as well. But I still got a lot of questions, and if this team's not drastically better defensively, we're going to see that in the regular season, just like how it was so tough for them to climb out of that hole last year. So definitely made improvements, but I think at 7th seed, I just have more confidence like in Brooklyn, because even Brooklyn last season, as bad as their year was, they were still better than the Hawks. And I think their roster right now is better than the Atlanta Hawks roster.
Yeah, as you mentioned, availability and adjustments and how available they can stay, specifically DeAndre Hunter, and how quick they can adjust is going to be a big part of the Hawks season. I'll touch on that more in a minute, but that's definitely the two biggest factors for them.
There's no way you have Miami at 7, don't you?
Yep, I do have Miami at 7. That's why I knew Gabe wasn't going to have my team at 7.
I thought about it.
I was like, there's no way Gabe has Miami at 7. So
big Miami guy right here. Yeah.
They have no wings, and that's a problem. That is a big problem in today's NBA. Jimmy's going to have to play more at the 4. Duncan Robinson might have to slide down a few spots. Martin's going to have to play a bigger role. But they are thin. They just signed an undrafted free agent at the wing as well, who had a decent senior year in college, but I'm not going to act like I'm a college expert and know what type of impact he's going to have, but this is Miami, so maybe he is their guy that's going to be their savior this year. But as far as proven talent, they just don't have the wing pieces here that you would expect. The loss of PJ Tucker has to be noted here. And they're one of the few teams in the Eastern Conference that didn't get better over the offseason. Now, this is obviously a team that was very good last year. That was up at the top of the conference. So this is definitely a big drop for them. If Bam Adebayo can step up and start shooting his 18, 19 shots a game, as he's talking about, and start being that borderline number 2 guy instead of Butler and Hero leading the offense, if Bam can start to come into that equation, that could keep them up. But otherwise, if Bam doesn't really take much of a jump, without their wing depth, without a proper replacement for PJ Tucker, I struggle to put them any higher as much as I value wing depth in this league. If they have any injuries to wings throughout this point in time in the season, they are going to be in big trouble, and we might see Duncan Robinson at the 4 minutes, which is not something I want to experience, and that's the biggest reason I have them at 7.
I really thought about moving them down when I looked at my list the final time. And you bring up some really good points on why they should be down there, honestly, like, for sure. But that's tough. That's very tough. Like you said, that's a 1 seed dropping to a 7. A team that was a shot away from the NBA Finals. That's tough. I don't think it's a hot take, though. I really don't. I don't at all. It's interesting, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gabe probably has them a lot higher.
Yeah.
I honestly, let me pop in right here, because I think your take is completely reasonable, because I have them at 6. I don't have them a lot higher. I've got them at 6 because, because all your points are true. Like, that is facts. Duncan Robinson at the 4, they're getting dogged the whole game. Especially, one of the biggest points is, if Bam can come and be a bigger impact player on offense, then what happens when great defensive players take a bigger load on offense? Every time. What happens every time? They
step back
get
a
a
little bit on defense.
little bit worse on defense. Not skill-wise, but a little bit less on the defensive end. And so then if you got Duncan at the 4 and Bam doing a little bit less on the defensive end, you're giving up a lot of points. But this is Miami. This is Jimmy. And they always just take care of business, and they always overperform. You said, oh, yeah, they just signed this undrafted ring free agent. Like, that guy's probably going to play rotation minutes and be solid for them just because this is Miami, and that's what they do every single year. Somehow, they're probably going to take Nikola Jovic, and he'll probably be solid this year because it's Miami, and that's just the type of randomness that happens there. You know,
If he graduates,
Tyler Hero was playing real solid for them. Udonis Haslem should not have a roster spot on this team. I just want to bring that up while we're talking. Udonis Haslem needs to hit the coaching. He needs to hit the coaching staff because obviously he plays a vital role to this organization and should definitely still be around in the locker room. But I think somebody else could use that roster spot, and Udonis Haslem could do the same things he's been doing for a decade. Perfectly fine. But regardless of that, I think this team, the way they're built, the way they operate, the coaching they have, the top talent they have, I don't see them falling to the play-in. Because it's kind of like they're kind of like even a souped-up version of like sort of what we're talking about with the Raptors. Like they always overperform because like something happens to somebody, but then they just find a way to get it done. I just can't like fathom Miami being below 6 seed. Respectfully,
this might be the year for that to happen, though.
It could be.
It might be. It's crazy because I have Miami higher than both of you guys. That's insane. My 6th seed is Brooklyn. I wrote out some like records, and I had Miami and Brooklyn at the same amount of wins. So, you know, maybe a little tiebreaker action going on there for Miami to get the seed above them, but. Brooklyn, Gabe brought up some really good points earlier about, you know, KD missed a lot of time. Ben Simmons hasn't played real NBA basketball in a year. Kyrie Irving is always something with his availability. Even with that being said, I think the way this roster is, especially because of the James Harden trade, if KD has to miss some time, if Kyrie has to miss some time, if Ben Simmons has to miss some time, you don't have Kessler Edwards and David Duke Jr. starting now. That's not what's going to be. You're going to have guys that should be able to play meaningful minutes like, you know, Seth Curry's there. Patty Mills now is back on the bench. TJ Warren sliding in, Royce O'Neal. Like, you got real NBA bodies that have contributed to winning basketball in the past. So if KD has to miss a little bit of time, Kyrie does, I think they'll be okay. And if you can get the most out of Ben Simmons this season, that's going to be very helpful. I do still have a lot of questions. Outside of Nick Claxton, they don't really have anybody behind him, I don't think. Like, their big man depth is very lacking. And even if Nick Claxton is your starting big, I have questions for sure. Ben Simmons is like their only really good guard defender. I have questions about that for sure. But with that being said, I think regular season they'll be good enough to make it out of the play-in and, you know, be a 6 seed in that realm, in that range right there. But when you got KD, when you got Kyrie, and potentially Ben Simmons, who's been an all-NBA player before, you'll have a chance to, you know, their ceiling is very high with those 3 guys at the helm.
Yeah, I feel similarly about a lot of things with Brooklyn. I have them at 6 as well. Like we mentioned, it's just availability for them, and how available they can stay is going to be largely dependent on where they can end up at the end of the season in terms of their seeding. Defense is still the biggest question. As you guys mentioned, Ben Simmons is a great addition, but it lacks outside of that. They brought in Royce O'Neal, replaces a bit of the void that was lost by the departure of Bruce Brown, but we're talking about 2 guys who were defended on the perimeter. That's not great. Outside of that, it definitely lacks. But Joe Harris is back from injury. You mentioned the depth that's there now from a scoring standpoint if they need it. So I think that depth is going to be enough to carry their offense on some nights when KD and Kyrie do miss some time. But that defense is the biggest question. I don't think it's going to be hindering enough for them to miss the play-in tournament, but it's definitely going to be a whole other question come playoff time if they have 2 defenders, and then it kind of starts to fall apart after that.
Like, bro, they legit had like Kessler Edwards, rookie Cam Thomas on the court in like close games in the fourth quarter. Like, KD was having to drop 50 to win some games in the early part of last season. Like that, like especially pre-James Harden trade, that roster was very, very poor.
Yeah.
And they upgraded significantly this offseason. I still don't think they're like one of the top contenders in the East because of those defensive questions, but it should be a lot better than last year.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about strictly regular season, I think it's a little easier to cover for a bad defense than a bad offense. Just because players aren't keyed in as much, then it's a little easier for KD and Kyrie to pop off and just score enough to get you above like some middle of the road team, rather than, oh, we're gonna run some really consistent offense the whole game and then really key in on your top guys and make somebody else beat us and all that kind of stuff. Once you get into the trenches, I think that's a little bit hard. I mean, obviously I have them lower than you guys do, but I think once you get to the defensive issues plus players being out, then I think it's going to add up and really, really hurt this team.
Definitely. Number 5 now?
Number 5.
Yes,
Yes.
top five. So, Tyrik, was your number 5 Miami because you had them tied with Brooklyn? Or was that a 6-7
yeah.
tie?
Nah, it was Miami. Yeah, I could talk about Miami real quick. You guys brought up very good points. No wings at all. Not having any wings is kind of crazy, especially for a team that seemed like they always had some wings, like to go along with Jimmy Butler. You know, PJ Tucker, Jay Crowder. Now it's like you're asking guys like Caleb Martin to really step up. Nikola Jovic, like as a rookie, maybe, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm banking on them making some type of move down the line. I think Pat Riley's smart enough to definitely be looking to upgrade that position. But if they don't, it's going to be scary, especially once we get to the playoffs. But I think regular season, it'll be enough to get by. We know Tyler Hero is going to be good, especially after he just got paid. He's probably going to be hooping his ass off. I expect Bam to take that offensive leap. I think it's time for him to do that. I think he might have realized, in the playoffs, they kind of needed him to do that, and he wasn't willing to. So I think he'll really take the regular season to kind of prove that point. And Jimmy's going to be what Jimmy is in the regular season. He's going to be cool. He's going to be an all-star. And Kyle Lowry, if he plays, he should be better. Hopefully he's healthy. So I think they'll have enough just to get by in the regular season. But playoffs, that's when those question marks are going to pop up if they don't make any significant changes during the regular season.
Yeah, I didn't think I would ever say this about a team at this point in time in Jay Crowder's career, but Miami are probably the team I look at the most and say they need to trade for Jay Crowder. Like, he would be a piece that would kind of ease some concerns of, okay, now we actually have a few wings. We can work with this.
Yeah, they just don't have anything to trade, like anything that – I mean, Phoenix doesn't have leverage, but they're not just going to give Jay Crowder for nothing. Like, you actually have to throw a little bit of something. They don't have any picks. They don't have any young assets. It's just like, are you going to trade Gabe Vincent for it? Like, I don't know. It's like –
I think they might give him away for nothing, bro. I'm going to be honest. Jay Crowder, like, I just saw, like, Bojan Bogdanovic go for nothing because the Jazz didn't really have any leverage because everybody knew they were rebuilding anyways. Everybody knows that Jay Crowder's out the door. They have zero leverage. It's like he might go for a second rounder. We see all the time that, like, a player gets traded and you're like, dang, that's all they had to give up for him.
Phoenix would
like, I think it's very real.
They'd be some fools to do that.
It is. I can't say it's not realistic, though.
I would expect if the market isn't that interested in Jay Crowder right now, they'll just wait and wait 2 or 3 months for someone to get a wing injury or two, and value will go up. Because there's always a team in and around the deadline that's looking for a wing. So you still might not get a first, but you might get an okay bench player in a second, which for Phoenix, you'll take an okay bench player because it's not the typical situation of trading away a player like Jay Crowder and you're like, I just want a first. Phoenix would probably take a decent backup wing or backup guard at the deadline. So,
hey, man, we got Peyton Pritchard for him. Peyton Pritchard, man, playoff hero.
All right, so I guess I'll move on to my 5 because it's a repeat, so it's not that interesting. I mean, it might be interesting. I got Atlanta here, so it's just like this team 2 years ago was like this level when they went to the conference finals, and I look at that team, and then I look at this team, and now obviously some stuff around them got better, but I'm like, I like this. I think this is the best Hawks team we've seen around Trae Young. Trae Young by himself can carry an entire offense. I think that DeJounte makes up for a lot of his weaknesses. I think that DeJounte can pick up some of the slack when Trae's on the bench. And, I mean, this team just like – I think John Collins will continue to be decent. I think Clint Capella will continue to be decent. Obviously, Okongwu might get better and, like, start pushing Capella kind of out of there, which isn't a bad thing if that means Capella's not regressing crazy. It just means now your center depth is better, or you're trading this guy for somebody even better probably, or just a better situation. You still got pretty solid depth around on this team. I think DeAndre Hunter, if he can stay healthy for a full year, obviously, like you said, he hasn't played a full year of basketball yet. But really, I think more than anything, I'm banking on these top two guys and just the fact that, like, DeJounte was the needle mover for the Spurs last year. Like, he got traded, and now we, like, consistently had that team at the bottom. And they made the play-in last year. Like, we've seen some of the teams we've had not make the play-in this year, and they're pretty solid. So him and then Trae Young, to me, is just on a different level, and he's still only 24 years old. Like, technically, he shouldn't even be in his prime yet. Now, statistically, I don't know how much he's going to go up because his stats are already crazy. But as far as a player, things like maybe off-ball movement or other aspects of his game, who knows what he's been working on most significantly in the offseason. But he's going to have a new dynamic, some new tools to play around with. And I think this team can be really solid.
If Trae Young can buy into moving off the ball, that just adds a different dynamic to this team offensively.
Because it's like, I know he hasn't been doing that, but I think he can, just because look at the situations he's been in. Like, we talk all the time about, like Russell Westbrook and James Harden don't really move off the ball that much. But, like, Russell Westbrook, he was playing with Kevin Durant and not really moving off the ball that much. It's like, who has Trae Young played with at that level who it's like, why should he be moving off the ball? What great playmaker has Trae Young played with? And so, or like what other really big star players should be taking the ball out of Trae Young's hands in any capacity? We didn't see that at Oklahoma. We have not seen that on the Hawks yet, for sure. And so it's like, now that he finally has that, I think he might be more willing than some of the players like a Russ or a James Harden or other players that we've sort of had that issue with in the past.
Yeah, I definitely can agree with that. I think there's definitely a case to be made that once Trae Young starts getting a few cross-court passes that he's never seen before in his NBA career, and he's like, oh, I get open threes from this, it's definitely going to increase his motivation to buy into that. So that might take a bit of time, but I think with time, as he starts to see the benefits of what DeJounte Murray can bring for him on the offensive end, then I think that transition will exist. I don't think that's going to be an adjustment that can't be made in Atlanta. And I think having two guards is going to be beneficial for them for two reasons. Obviously, one, like there's just a lot of nights, specifically in the playoffs, but even just in the regular season last year, where fourth quarter comes around and it's just 2-3 guys all up in Trae Young's face, because who else is going to create for Atlanta? Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter, like it's just not there. That's there now. So Trae Young's going to have less pressure on him, and he was already elite offensively. Not to mention the fact now that even though you lost DeLon Wright as a backup point guard, now you can stagger those minutes. You'll pretty much have one of those guys on the court at any given time. So you're going to have an all-star caliber point guard on the court for most of your 48 minutes of any given game. So their guard play is going to be much better. Their perimeter defense is going to be better because of it. How much that impacts their team defense is going to be based on, as you mentioned earlier, Tyrik, if Capella can look more like his 2021 version than his 2020 than he was last year, and how much of a jump Okongwu can make, and probably most importantly, if DeAndre Hunter can play like 65, 70 games in a season, which, as you mentioned, we have not seen yet. I also like, as an underrated addition, how Justin Holiday can fit in this team. I think he gives them a little bit more defense at the 2 or at the 3 and a little bit more three-point shooting. And hopefully we can see a bit of a bounce-back season from Bogdanović as well. 2 years ago, outside of Trae Young, he looked like their most consistent scorer on this team. And last year, he just wasn't that. Struggled to see the court at times, struggled a bit with injury. So if he can bounce back a bit, if Hunter can stay healthy, I think this team has really good upside, specifically as the year goes on. They probably rise up the standings a bit, but they're also my 5 seed as well.
Definitely. AJ Griffin also, he's looked pretty solid in preseason. That was a nice like value pick.
Definitely.
But I was just thinking about when you said like if Trae Young is getting those open threes, because like I feel like when I watch Trae Young, whenever he does get wide open threes, like he never misses them. Like they're pretty much
percentage wise, he
guaranteed.
is very good at it. He just doesn't get them.
Exactly. So that's like I said, like if that happens, like he can buy into like, okay, I'm just as deadly off the ball and with the ball in my hands with DeJounte on the court. This offense is going to be very, very deadly. It's just all about the defense in my book. Like I think offensively they're going to be good as they usually are, but defensively, can they make those necessary steps? Can they stay healthy? And if so, then I think like a 5 seed is very realistic for them, maybe even higher because they have the offensive talent to be a very good regular season team.
No Miami in the top 5s, and everyone has Cleveland in the top 4. Or no Miami in the top 4, I should say.
Yeah, I got
No,
my
yeah, no Miami. Everybody's got that Cleveland going high. But honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I'm not to Cleveland yet. I'll not be talking about the Cavs right now. Is anybody talking?
I am not yet talking about the Cavs.
I'm talking about a team that scares me the most outside of Milwaukee as a Celtics fan. This team scares me the most when it comes to playoff basketball.
Who are we talking about next right now? Because I know who I'm talking about right now, and it might be a little shocking.
How can I say this? They have a former MVP and a guy that might win MVP this year.
That would be the boys that have got the MIP candidate, Tyrese Maxey.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. Do you guys both have the Sixers at 4?
I do not.
I got Philly
because I do not have them at 4. Well, I guess you can go ahead and talk about them because me and Dev are not there yet.
Yeah, it got a little tricky when I got to the top 4. I'm not gonna lie. This is the part of the list though I kind of just left as it was when I wrote it out last week. Like I said, outside of Milwaukee, as a Celtics fan, Philly scares me the most. Obviously, Joel Embiid is an MVP caliber player. I'm expecting James Harden to get near his usual self. It won't be Houston Harden, but I think it'll be closer to what we saw his first year in Brooklyn. And even like the high points in Brooklyn last year where he was able to, get those, 28, 30-point triple-double games. And they had such a great offseason, man. DeAnthony Melton was still a trade, which I don't understand how people just forgot about it or didn't know it didn't happen. That was such a good pickup on draft night. And then getting PJ Tucker, getting Daniel House. This team made some really, really good moves, man. And they added to their depth, which was very lacking, especially once we saw injuries hit them in the playoffs. Guys like Furkan Korkmaz was getting minutes when he shouldn't have been. DeAndre Jordan was getting minutes when he should not have been. They made those necessary additions in the offseason. Even like getting Montrezl Harrell was a good move. Playoff-wise, I think they're going to be scary. I just think regular season, they're going to do enough to get like home court advantage. Something about the 3 teams I have above them just moves me a little more when it comes to regular season basketball. But playoffs, they're going to be deadly as hell, man. But we'll see. I'm intrigued that you guys have them higher though, so I want to see who you have at 4.
At 4, I went with the Bucks. This is still the team that I'm the highest on in the conference come playoff time. But as far as regular season goes, this is where I have them. Their depth is going to be lacking a little bit in the regular season. Joe Ingles is going to be one of the guys they're relying on the most, and he's not going to be ready to go day one. We know what Giannis is going to do. We know what Middleton's going to go do. We know what Drew Holiday is going to do. Outside of that, some of their depth isn't as good as you would like it to be when you're looking at their bench. Javon Carter looks to be the main backup point guard this year. If he can improve offensively, that helps. But this is definitely a team that looks like they're going to rely on the brilliance of their stars again come playoff time. And I think that 3-man core is enough to make them, at least in my eyes, still the best team in the East come playoff time. But a little bit of a lack of depth, a little bit of a we've been there before syndrome, if you want to call it that, I think is definitely going to come into play here. Still going to comfortably be a top 4 seed as far as I'm concerned. Still going to be absolutely dominant and show up when they need to. We know Giannis is going to do his thing night in, night out, and that's the biggest reason why you bank on and believe in the Bucks. I just think there's going to be a few more teams that might commit a little bit more to the regular season and are just built for regular season success a little bit more.
I agree. That's why I also have the Bucks at 4. I think at this point, what are they playing for from October to April? What are they playing for? This team is built and has full intentions to be playing in June. And it's like, if they secured a 4th seed, given my predictions, it's like this team would face Atlanta in the first round, who I think they take care of business against. Second round, they're going against Philly. Playoff time, if I said Bucks versus Philly, I'm probably taking Bucks and then them against like Cleveland or Boston or something. So those 3 teams above them, like those 3 teams, whoever they end up going against in the second, third round between Cleveland, Boston, and the Sixers, I'm probably picking the Bucks in any series. But it's like, who are they, or what are they playing for right now?
I have a counter to that. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I have a counter to that because we say that, right? And last day of the regular season last year, they didn't play their guys. They lost. Celtics won. Game 7 ended up being in Boston. And when it's Game 7's in Boston, only one dude has really ever beaten Celtics in Boston in Game 7. That's like LeBron. Like, it just doesn't happen. So I think I hear what you guys are saying. The lack of depth is definitely a thing. But the way Giannis plays, he's always 110% every time he's on the floor. They missed their guys a lot last year. Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton missed a lot of time like early on in the season. Brook Lopez missed a big chunk of the season too. If they're healthy, I think we will see them try and push for a 1 seed because they don't want to go on the road in Boston again to have to win a series in a win or go home game, or even in Philly or maybe Cleveland. They don't want to have to do that. So I think they might have a little more incentive to try and be the best team in the East during the regular season, even though maybe some factors might be against them. But at the end of the day, they have the best 3-man core and they have the best player in the world too. So
yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. Definitely an argument for that. But if I'm looking over the course of an 82 game season, I'm taking the 3 teams I got ahead of them. That depth from a 1 through 4 standpoint is gonna hurt on some nights when you start getting a few guys banged up.
Yeah, I think our top 3 is, both of us, we've got some combo of Philly, Boston, and Cleveland in the top 3. And so with those 3 teams, I'm like, okay, like Cleveland made this big trade. They were young, kind of fell off at the end of the season last year. They obviously have something to prove. Philly's got something to prove. They have the first full year of this like Embiid, Harden dynamic, and especially Embiid is going to want to be as good as possible, get as good position as possible, because he's in year whatever now and still hasn't made the conference finals. And so however he can secure the easiest path for himself to do that, I think he's going to be really trying to secure that with his squad. And then Boston as well, obviously they lost their coach for the entire season. Like that's obviously going to raise some questions with them. And so I think they might have that little extra chip on their shoulder, maybe a little bit of, coach is out, so they might kind of side a little bit, say this year might be a wash, just lost the finals, maybe a little bit of leftover feelings from that, and maybe they push themselves a little bit harder too. But the Bucks, they made their finals run, they won the title, had it last year where went out in not great fashion, but they know as well. They probably all know in that locker room, they're like, okay, we lost, but our second best player was out, and if he was in, we're probably winning that series. So I think they're still like, okay, if we're just like about as cool as we were last year, but Middleton's playing, like we're probably fine.
that's definitely fair, but it's like then you have to have the idea too, like you want to be in the best position possible just in case a Chris Middleton gets banged up or a Drew Holiday gets banged up. You just want to be in that position to where, okay, if we do have to play a game 7 or a critical game, we're at home instead of having to go on the road playing in a hostile environment against a team that's super confident. That's my thinking. I definitely get what you guys are saying though, but that's just like why I think they might have more of an incentive to try and be a very good regular season team again.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, I think Giannis just gives 110% every night. I think this team's going to try and win as many games as they can. I don't think they get higher than a 4 seed.
That's fair. That's fair.
So three seeds. Who wants to start that one off?
I'm going to start with Boston.
Mm.
Boston
Okay.
is my number 3. Losing a head coach matters, even though it is a rookie head coach. Udoka did still do a good job on the court last year. I won't speak to his off the court actions, but on the court, it worked out last year. They're losing that, and it remains unsure now when Robert Williams will be back. He is going to miss time. It appears as though that injury last year was a little bit more serious than it might have been let on. And that's obviously going to impact this Boston defense as well. This Boston defense is still going to be good without him, but whenever you're losing a player that is defensive player of the year caliber, your defense is going to take a hit. Now, I still think this team is going to be very good without him. I still think this defense is probably still even a top 5 defense without him, but they're probably not an overwhelming number 1 defense without him. And that still has to be taken into account. And I think there's 2 teams ahead of them that are very good and are very committed to this regular season that have a lot more and a lot better depth than this Boston team has, especially when you consider the fact that Robert Williams is going to be out and you're now going to be starting probably a Derek White or a Malcolm Brogdon, deciding on how they want to run those rotations. So I think this Boston team is still going to be very good. They're going to be one of the best teams in the East. They're going to have a shot at going deep in the playoffs again next year. But similar to Milwaukee, I think the 2 teams of them have better depth. I think they're better built for a grind and grit of an 82-game season where guys are going to miss time and are going to get banged up. So still a very good team, but you're changing your head coach again for another season, and you're missing arguably your best defensive player. I'm putting them as a 3 seed.
That's fair. Very good points.
Okay. Well, I do not have Boston at 3 with you. I have Cleveland at 3, and I know both you guys were really high on Cleveland. I'm glad you're there with me, Tyrik. I just don't think this team is exactly 1 seed level yet. I think that even with the trade, I think from not in the playoffs to like 1 seed is a little wild. But I think from out of the playoff for as good as they were for most of last season and getting up to like 3 seed, I think that's a cool prediction. I think that's a safe prediction. And I still think that the last 2 teams I have are a bit better. I think their best players are a little bit better than maybe Cleveland's top players. But just looking at Cleveland individually, made the trade. You have Donovan Mitchell, a guy who's obviously great in the regular season, but definitely, I think, most known for his playoff abilities. You have Darius Garland back for another year after his breakout performance. You have Jared Allen after his breakout season still there. You have a year of development from Evan Mobley. You have a lot of really good things going for this team. I think you have some solid depth here. I think you obviously have solid top-end talent. I think you have solid players at pretty much every position around the court. So a lot of things to look forward for. I just think they haven't been here before with this core. And I think that might limit them a little bit, might cause them to drop a couple games and prevent them from being that top seed. But this team is going to be very good. I think this will be this year's Memphis type situation very clearly, where they take that big jump, still pretty young, but do some great stuff.
Yeah, I have them at 3 as well. Defensively, they're going to be otherworldly when you got the bigs and Allen and Mobley. Being able to slide Caris LeVert to the bench is big because they didn't have bench scoring really last season after Rubio went down, and obviously Colin Sexton was hurt. So that's definitely great. Everybody knows how much I love Darius Garland, like one of my favorite young guards in the game, one of my favorite players in the game, honestly. And obviously getting Donovan Mitchell raises your ceiling. It's just, there's some things that this team will, I think, lack. They don't seem like the deepest of teams when I look at it. It's like when you get to like needing some more bench scoring outside of like a Caris LeVert. Rubio, when he gets back, hopefully he gets back to some type of form that he was last season. But he had a big injury, and who knows when he will be back. And the 3-point shooting definitely worries me. They don't really have like a ton of outside shooting. They have guys that can hit shots, like Kevin Love can for sure hit shots. Dean Wade can hit shots. Obviously, like Darius Garland can hit shots, but outside of that, it's not like it's a little lacking. That might be more of a playoff issue though. But regular season, we've talked about a ton of times. So if you have a really good defense in the regular season, you will win games. And last season, they were winning a lot of games until injuries hit them bad. And that's when their defense took a little bit of a hit and they already were lacking offensively. But yeah, they're going to be a really good team, man. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they did end up being the 1 seed. I wouldn't be surprised. But like Gabe said, that is kind of a drastic jump for them to make from being outside of the playoffs to the 1 seed in a single offseason. That'd be kind of crazy, but I wouldn't put it past him at all.
I will remain
Devin.
silent until they come up on my list.
Mm-hmm. Here's Devin about to have them at the 1 seed. Crazy hot take.
Well,
we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
My 2 seed is the Bucks. I already talked about the Bucks, so that's my 2 seed. I think they will have every reason in their minds to try and win as many games as possible in the regular season. Might get an MVP season from Giannis. No spoilers though.
He's got the script. No spoilers.
Giannis plays. I feel like Giannis at this point gives you an MVP caliber season every season.
Hey man, he's been.
That's to me. He's just that good. To me, I picked him as my MVP last year. Like I just think he's that good every year.
Both did. You both did. I was the only one with Jokic.
So obviously, I think he's going to give you that MVP type performance day in, day out. It's just, I don't know, man. Something just tells me when a team has been at the top for this long, because this team's been getting 1 seed since 2019 at this point. It's for about to be like
what? They've gotten 2 1 seeds?
But still, they've been like at this high level, at this top level, competing for like 4 or 5 years at this point. So it's like at this point, I feel like they might settle in enough to be like, okay, let's save it for May, June, because we know we can beat any of these. Because they know I think we are almost all in it. At least me and Devin both concurred that this team is the scariest team in the playoffs. And so, I think they're looking around and they're like, man, we're better than all 8 of these teams. Who cares who we play in what round? Like,
I agree too. But I just think it's always good to have as many advantages as possible once you get to the playoffs, just so you don't have to go on the road like they did and play a Game 7, and they played their worst game of the playoffs. They were terrible in that Game 7. And they had the Grant Williams. He's not doing that in Milwaukee. He's not hitting 7 threes in Milwaukee. Like, that's not happening. That's probably a Wesley Matthews hitting 7 threes compared to Grant Williams. Like, you just want to have as many advantages as possible, especially if you do, God forbid, lose somebody for an entire series like they did. Because I think if they had home court advantage, they probably would have got out of that series. And then Chris Middleton would have been back. And the rest of the playoffs, we might be singing a different story. Jordan Poole getting punched in the face might be, a little more concerning now because the Warriors didn't win last season. Like, that's how it could have happened. Like, you just, you want to have as many advantages as possible when you get to the playoffs, man.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great point.
Definitely. When I look at the personnel of this Milwaukee team too, obviously I don't have them finishing this high, but like, I just don't see the personnel that's going to have the mindset of, as long as we're like a top 4 seed, we're happy. Like, I just don't see that personnel here. Giannis is not that guy. Drew Holiday's not that guy. And if 2 of your main 3 guys are like that, that's probably going to trickle down to the rest of the team and wanting to compete night in, night out. So I just don't see the personnel here that's going to take that mindset personally. I still don't have them at the 2 seed, but I just don't see the personnel here that's going to go into the season and say, yeah, let's not try for the 1 seed. If it happens, it happens. But I'm sure if we've seen enough of Giannis over the years, I'm sure Giannis is coming into this season with the mindset of, I still don't feel like I'm the best player in the league. I need to prove myself, and I need to be the 1 seed. So.
Definitely.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with the perennial chip on the shoulder, man. But yeah, I think that honestly, the point about like, is Grant Williams doing that in Milwaukee? That's like, I think that's the biggest selling point for them really trying to push for that top spot. Like, it's just, that's a terrible way to go out, bro. That's a terrible way to go out.
Like they were leaving him wide open, and in Milwaukee, he's probably like 2 for 18 instead of 7 for 18.
That's Batman, but if you're outside of Gotham, who knows if Batman's doing that?
He's just Bruce Wayne outside of Gotham, man. Just Bruce Wayne.
Well, I guess I'll give my 2 seed next. I got Boston here. Got Boston Celtics as my 2 seed. This team, they finished the season last year. They were playing way better than everybody. Way better than everybody to end the season. Not just on the defensive end, but just in general. And so I just expect a lot of that to carry over. Even though you don't have your coach, these players, I think, are old enough, mature enough at this point that they can say, all right, we learned all these valuable lessons. We know a lot of the good things he did. Most of these players have played with him and played with Coach Stevens. So they have a lot of things that I think no matter who's coaching the show, that roster can play good ball. With that being said, at the end of the day, it is still an impact. It still does make things a little bit harder. I think some of those games where you get down the stretch and you got to drop a play to get the win, maybe that's where they drop some really close ones down the stretch. Maybe especially early season, you might see that with them. Obviously started off last season a little slow before picking it up. Who knows if that happens again? Maybe this team just shows a pattern and they're a little bit of slow starters. We don't know. We'll have to see. But they're not my 1 seed due to a lot of things that Dev said earlier and just in general, losing a head coach and then getting better usually is not that big of a thing. Like this, I don't think that's usually a thing that happens. But this team will be really, really, really solid. Really, really great.
Well, in your book, they would lose a coach and be the same because they were 2 seed last year. Potentially.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're gonna get better, but I think they can replicate last season's success. Like I said, they learned the lessons. These players have been in the league for a while. It's not their first rodeo. They've been competing since the first year they were here.
And let's remember, Boston were as good as they were last year while being terrible for the majority of the first half of the season relative to their standards.
So yeah, you don't even have to be as good as you were in that second half last year. If you're balancing out between the terrible first half and the great second half, you're balancing out as just a consistent 2 seed. Like they can regress a little bit, and because of how better than everybody else they were towards the end of last season, regressing and still being the same seed at the end of the day.
Yeah, they were beating good teams by like 20 points every night routinely. It seemed like from All-Star break on, like they were just dominating the competition.
Yeah, they definitely were.
All right, Devin, is Cleveland your 1 seed or your 2 seed?
They are not my 2 seed. This is where I have Philly. Philly have every making of a really good regular season team. Their defense looks like it's going to be very, very good next year. We know how good Embiid can be on the defensive end. You add PJ Tucker to the equation. Matisse Thybulle is still going to play a role. Melton is now on the team, who's a much better defender as a primary backup guard than Shake Milton is. This team is just set up to be a top 5 defensive unit, at very least a top 10 defensive unit. Throw that in with the fact that Harden had a full offseason for the first time in a while. As you guys mentioned, Embiid's going to be trying to get an MVP award finally this year. You've added PJ Tucker. You've added Melton. Maxey looks like he's probably only going to get better than he was last year, and that is a scary thought because this team could legitimately have 20-plus per game scores, potentially even 4 if Tobias Harris ups his numbers a bit. This team just has that much talent. As you mentioned, Tyrik, the addition of Montrezl Harrell, at least for the regular season, is nice, gives them a bit more punch and a bit more depth off the bench. Daniel House gives you a little bit more of a different look on the wing if you want a bit more defense over the spacing of Jordan Niang. This team is so deep. They have multiple guys who can get you a ton of points on any given night. They're going to have a better defense than what was already a good defense last year. This team has the makings of being a good playoff team as well, but especially in the regular season, they have your wing depth. They have your very good defense. They have multiple guys who can give you 20, 25 plus on any given night. This just looks like a team that is absolutely built to have a very good regular season, assuming they can stay healthy, which is obviously the biggest question with any team that ever has Joel Embiid on it. But assuming that is the case, then I don't see any reason why they won't be amongst the top 2 seeds in the East.
Very, very scary team. They did everything perfectly in the offseason to make this a team that should be competing for a championship. And I say should be because I feel like we always have the expectation for Philly to be that, but they kind of let us down. Hopefully this is the year, though, because Joel definitely deserves to play basketball past the second round. Same thing for Harden. And just, maybe Doc Rivers can get rid of that stigma, too, that he's not as great as a coach as he's been made out to be.
Let's hope. It'd be nice to see this team make a bit of a run.
All right, I need to hear the case. Why is Cleveland the best team in the conference?
Cleveland.
Yeah.
Cleveland is the team that just looks like that slightly more better Murrayed version of a very good regular season team. This is a young team that's hungry for success. They are going to want the 1 seed, arguably more than anybody else in the conference. They're going to have a very good defense. As you guys mentioned, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley is arguably the best defensive frontcourt in the league, especially now that Jaren Jackson's going to miss time in Memphis. That just adds to their case for that argument. Their guard scoring is going to be arguably the best in the league as well. Garland, of course, had his great year last year. You add Donovan Mitchell to that. Sure, there's going to be a bit of time of getting used to that to make sure it's a natural flow of the offense and not a Garland, it's your turn. Now Mitchell, it's your turn, because that is a concern that can be of worry sometimes when you're talking about integrating 2 so ball-dominant guards. But at least Donovan Mitchell has played alongside a point guard for the last few years, with Mike Conley being in town. So hopefully it isn't as big of a transition as it could potentially be if Donovan Mitchell was just the point guard in Utah as well. And when it does adjust, Donovan Mitchell's going to get his offense easier. Garland's going to get his offense easier. It's just going to allow those guys to be that much more productive. Now, obviously, the biggest concern on this team now is where does your spacing come from? Where does your shooting come from? And those are very valid concerns. Isaac Okoro needs to improve his 3-point shooting. That's just a matter of fact that needs to happen. I don't expect him to go out and shoot 40% from 3 this year, but can he start shooting a little bit faster and a little bit more efficiently on some closeouts? I believe that's possible because we've seen over the last couple of years he continues to improve year on year. It's not massive leaps, but he has improved. So as long as he can be better than the guy who gets covered the least on the perimeter from 3 next year, they have a shot there. I think Mobley, I don't expect to be shooting a ton from 3 yet, but I think he will continue to extend his range as well. But teams are going to have to respect just the size that Mobley and Allen deliver. So they might lack a little bit in spacing, but if you don't respect the size of Mobley and Allen, they're going to dominate you in the paint. They're both lob threats that Garland and Mitchell can take advantage of on some of their dribble penetration. So I think they're still going to be able to cause enough havoc offensively there, whilst being one of the best defensive teams in the league. As far as depth goes, I honestly feel a little bit differently than you mentioned, Tyrik, about a bit of a concern of depth for this team. I think this team has a lot of depth. Obviously, Rubio being out for likely the first couple of months of the season is a problem. Once he's back, then arguably the best bench in the conference, in my opinion. But Karis LeVert back on the bench, if you can, as much as he did struggle to adjust last year in Cleveland, he's got an offseason now. He's got a training camp to adjust. That can matter when you're adjusting to a new role, when you've been on multiple teams over the last couple of years. So I think he's going to be set for a better season. Kevin Love was not really a 6th man of the year candidate, but outside of Tyler Hero was one of the best ones last year. And definitely, if he can continue that level of production, is going to be very valuable. Cedi Osman looked a lot more consistent towards the end of the year. I think Dean Wade is a very undervalued and underrated player by many people. He just got a very well-deserved extension and can actually shoot the 3 a bit as well. So there's a lot of pieces here. Raul Neto can still give you some backup point guard minutes before Ricky Rubio returns. So there's reason to have some concerns about a little bit of shooting, about a little bit of guard depth before Ricky Rubio comes back. But this defense is going to be so overwhelming. They might have the best defense in the conference, or at least the best interior duo in Mobley and Allen, and they might have the best backcourt in Garland and Mitchell in the conference. You got that much bests alongside at best or at worst above average depth, in my opinion. once Rubio comes back, they're only going to get better as the season progresses. They're only going to get better as they adjust to the addition of Mitchell. I'm really high on this team, obviously, to put them at 1. I think they have all the makings of being a team that's really hungry to make the number 1 seed.
One of the best coaches too, man. JB's been doing his damn thing.
Definitely.
The case was made. You know, I think I've learned a couple things here about Mr. Devin in the past couple weeks. I think you like your defensive centers, and this team has 2 defensive big men that are really good. I think you like to take your gambles on new teams with both your 1 seed picks. And the Utah Jazz breaking up apparently just reignited your love for basketball because you have both of their players' new teams at the top of the conference.
Mans was a silent Utah supporter.
I liked some of the pieces. I did not like the collective.
Okay.
We'll put it that way.
All I'm going to say is if the Cavs do get the 1 seed, I am pushing some nasty Darius Garland MVP agendas, man.
Nasty agendas, bro. Nasty agendas. Is he even the best player on that team?
Remains to be seen, I guess.
Yeah.
I think he will. I think he can be.
I
think he can be the best player on that team in about 2 years. But right now, I don't know if I can say Darius Garland's better than a guy who.
Yeah.
Fair enough to the system. He's spreading the ball to a lot of talented players, but I don't know if I can say Darius Garland is better than a guy who averaged damn near 45 points in the playoff series.
Hey, he's coming to Darius's team though. This is his team.
Yeah, I think
Paul George came to Russ's team though, and Paul George is the best player on that team within a year.
This is Darius Garland, man. He's on the rise.
I think if Cleveland are a 1 seed, Garland is the MVP. I don't think Cleveland are a 1 seed if Garland isn't the most valuable player on this team. Mitchell is still going to be darn good, and he can score 25 points a night, but Garland can put up similar points while creating so much more on this offense.
It's like the Devin Booker Chris Paul dynamic, almost.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell will have a crazy winning aura around him if Cleveland comes in as a 1 seed. Because he was a 1 seed with Utah. Obviously things fizzled out in the playoffs, but regular season wise, he came in as a rookie, and I don't think that team was expected to do very much after Gordon Hayward left. Had a really good, obviously made the second round rookie season, and then ever since then, they've had a 1 seed, they've been that consistent playoff team. And if he comes here to a new team, then they're oh, this team is nasty, he's gonna have some aura around him, man, and that's a positive one at that.
Yeah, note too that that Donovan Mitchell will finally not have to be everything on offense. So still a bit of a projection and remains to be seen, but we could see him start to commit a bit more on the defensive end as well, which is only going to help this Cleveland team. Remains to be seen, but we've seen in the past pre-NBA and at times in NBA that he can defend. It's just whether he commits to it, which he'll have a little bit more energy in the tank this year with Garland being able to take more of the offensive load as well.
And just being on a new team too will probably bring something out of him defensively. Hopefully,
sure.
We'll see. Well, it's no secret. My 1 seed is the Boston Celtics.
He's a homer.
Yeah, very biased.
He's a homer.
I saved my biased pick when it came to rankings and all that for the standings. Obviously, losing Ime is unprecedented and not something that anybody expected before the season to happen, especially, just a few weeks out. But Joe Mazzulla, who is the interim head coach, he's been there for some time. So I think what Ime put into place will still be the standard will still be set and everything will still be there. Obviously, the Robert Williams injury does worry me some, but as far as the regular season goes, I think right now we still have enough to get by until he's back on the floor. Like Devin mentioned, they'll still be really good defensively, maybe not, historically good like they were the second half of last season. But I still think they could be a top 5-6 defense, even with Rob Williams missing time. And I'm expecting Jaylen Brown to be pissed off because the trade rumors in the offseason. He wants his bag, so he's definitely going to be playing his best basketball. Even in preseason, it seems like he's already in mid-season form, so that's good to see. And Jason Tatum, even though he dissed me, has a sour taste in his mouth, man. From what we saw in the finals, was not good. And I think he should be coming looking for blood and trying to get an MVP trophy. Like that should be on Jason Tatum's mind. The Brogdon move in the offseason was amazing. Didn't have to give really anything up of importance. Gallinari would have been perfect to have. Obviously, he got hurt in Eurobasket, which sucks. But we talked about the Blake Griffin move last week. That was cool. I liked it. If he's coming in playing like 12 to 15 minutes, just filling in spot minutes, especially when Rob Williams is not there in the early part of the season, that's fine. I can deal with that. And the rest of the roster is what it is. Marcus Smart's still there. Al Horford's still there. I think they'll be fine in the regular season. And I think, defensively, this will be good. I think offensively, they could be even better than they were last year. And that is the makings to be a 1 seed for me.
Fair point. Fair points. I really can't hate on you saying the team that was just as good as they were as the 1 seed. Like, I mean, there's not really a lot of holes to poke there. Obviously, I think we kind of poked all the ones that were already there. My 1 seed's a little different though. I like that we all three of us have a different 1 seed. That's really nice. But I got Philly, man. I got Philly. I'm pushing some nasty Joel Embiid MVP narratives here. With that, I think full year of him and James Harden together, I think James Harden might have a little bit of a resurgence. I think they have a lot of other scoring options. So now James Harden's job is just to play make, and he does that just about as well as anybody. Tyrese Maxey, you alluded earlier to him being a most improved player candidate, and I completely agree. I don't know who I'm going to actually pick for the award because it's always some random guy. It's never like the guy you expect, but I do think Tyrese Maxey still will take a leap, played very well in the playoffs for him, and hopefully some of that carries over as the team continues to mesh together from their midseason trade last year. Obviously, if Tobias Harris is your 4th best player, I think he made his name was brought up in those positional lists. So, he's pretty solid guy to have there for you. Team has some solid depth bringing in guys like Trez. Shake Milton's played solid minutes for them. At the PJ Tucker is always on the 1 seed, bro. I swear to God, he's always on the 1 seed. So it's like this team got PJ Tucker. That just like gives me all the confidence I need of. Yeah, they're gonna get the 1 seed this season. So I just with their depth, with their top end talent, with them having the guy that I think is the best bet to win MVP and their 2nd best player, hopefully having a bit of a resurgence as his role kind of changes and he goes through a legitimate full off season when, he's one of those players that sort of played themselves into shape a little bit. I think it'll be good for him and it'll be good for this team all around.
Definitely. What I love about Philly, they seem like very internally just soft as hell last year. And you go out, you add PJ Tucker, you get DeAnthony Melton, you get Daniel House, you get Trez. You get guys that are known dogs in the league. And they definitely lacked that last season. So, the identity should be a lot different and they should be a lot more locked in defensively as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that point. I agree with everything you alluded to, Gabe. If there's any other team that's getting the 1 seed other than Cleveland, I feel most confident about Philly getting it. This team is just built for so much success. They have 4 guys who can give you 20 plus on any given night. They just have so much good going on. A full off season for them to gel, for some guys to rest and get healthy, specifically in Harden. And yeah, Philly's set for a very good season. And as long as Embiid can stay healthy, he'll have another good shot at winning MVP this year, no doubt.
I got to stay consistent with all my agendas. So, if I'm pushing some Embiid MVP agendas, I got to account for Joel Embiid being healthy. And so, if I'm accounting for healthy Joel Embiid the whole season, I like them at the 1 seed, man.
So you're already foreshadowing your board ballot?
I'm not saying he's going to be number 1, but I'm saying that I think his name will be brought up in that video at some point, and I don't think his name can be brought up in that video if he's not healthy. So I have to predict the healthy Joel Embiid to talk about him when that time comes.
I think he will be. I think the injury bug label is off of him. I'm gonna say so.
To a serious extent, I think. Yeah, I think it's safe to expect that Joel's probably going to miss at least 10 games a year, but we haven't seen like out for 2-3 months in a while now.
Like last season, most of his games were COVID related, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah.
I do like that. Our lists were like drastically different, like all over the place, and I think that is how to explain the Eastern Conference going into this season.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It is very difficult to predict the East, and even though we both had the same teams at 15, 9, and 8, especially at 9 and 8, I would not be surprised if those end up being different.
Yes,
that's just the nature of the East this year. Wouldn't be
Yeah,
surprised if Toronto jump up. Wouldn't be surprised if the Bulls slide down. Like you don't know in this conference this year.
I think things can change really quick. Obviously, all the question marks with Orlando and Detroit and how much they can jump going into this season. And then I got Brooklyn at 7, and it's like they added some depth. And if those players actually decide, oh, we're about to play a lot of games this year, then that team could be like cracked. And then, maybe a team like Cleveland have a little bit of a gelling period and they fall a little bit further than we think. Maybe, I don't know, different things happen across the board and things can change a lot. But I think we have a lot of nuance in our predictions. I think a lot of people are like, all right, here's the predictions if everybody's healthy. And there's just looking at the roster and how I think they can play. And it's like, I think we don't predict any catastrophic injuries to happen, but the fact that we account like, all right, this guy's probably going to miss like 10, 15 games over the course of the season. That kind of pattern behavior, I think it adds a different level of accuracy than a lot of rankings might have.
Just being realistic about it.
Yeah, exactly. I can't honestly put together a list at this point in time in KD and Kyrie's career and just assume that everything's going to be all swell in Brooklyn and Ben, Kyrie, and KD are all going to play 82 games. Great if it does. I'll be very happy to see them all play 82 games. But the past has indicated that that's probably not going to happen.
Yes.
If we put this into the 2K simulation, it's about to look like way different than our list. Way different.
I don't know how 2K simulation is on 23. So.
True.
Do you guys think your 1 seed could win 60 games?
In this Eastern Conference? No.
I agree.
No. I think if any team's going to do it, it'll be Philly, and I don't think they're doing it. But if anyone's going to do it, I think it's Philly.
I think 58.
See, I don't know. Because I think Philly could go out and win 60. I think if you get an MVP season out of Embiid and you get an MIP season out of Maxey and Harden has a resurgence, like that's like best case scenario, all those things happen and you go out and win 60 games. To be honest, the team that I think is most likely to win 60 is actually Boston. Now, because of the Time Lord injury and things, I think they might start off a little bit slow. Also getting adjusted to there's a different coach in the building. Even though he was there before, I think that's still also going to maybe contribute to a little bit of a slow start again. But if they don't start slow and they just come out of the gate winning a lot of games, I don't see any reason why that team would slow down over the course of the season. So then I think they could very easily carry on to 60 wins, especially considering how they played the back end of last season.
I don't know if there's any team that I think can win 60 this year.
Yeah, it's tough just due to how many good teams there are. I mean, best case scenario for every team, there's 8 teams that I could very easily, realistically see winning 50 games next year in the East. So it's gonna make it tough for anyone to really pull away from the rest of the pack because there's a lot of good teams, but I don't look at anyone and say, yeah, you're really heads and tails above everyone else.
The bottom would have to be very, very bad. Kind of like how the West was. Like those teams are obviously not good.
Yeah.
It would have to be the same.
But yeah, I don't think the bottom of the East is going to be bad enough for that. At least not early on, because to start the year, other than Indiana, I don't see anyone that's not going to be competing. I just don't see it. Unless Charlotte decided to flip course and in 2 weeks, Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward get traded, and that's a whole different story. I'd like that to happen, but probably not.
Yeah, they
That
should
or
do
Steve
that.
Clifford would probably resign if that happened, one of the two. But
Oh man.
That's rough, man. Yeah. I think this was kind of hard to put together. I think things that I was really solid on was I think Brooklyn's going to be in the play-in again. I just have this gut feeling. Really solid with Chicago at 9. I was pretty solid with 7 through 9 overall. Really, even 7 through 10. I was pretty convinced in my mind early on that I was like, I think Detroit can make that 10 seed push. And then like top 5 and bottom 5 were honestly a lot harder for me than the middle.
I feel confident about nothing other than the Pacers. I have no confidence about who is going to stick where in this Eastern Conference. I'm going to stick with my picks. But that being said, I will not be surprised if it ends up changing throughout the course of the season. That is for sure.
I really did not expect the Knicks at 13 to be like a crazy pick. I thought that was going to be like.
I hate having Orlando at 14. Like, I just keep looking at it. I'm like, I do not like that.
Yeah,
it just speaks to the talent level, man. There's so many good teams.
When I first crafted the list, I put them at 14, and then I was like looking at the other teams, and I'm like, I just like some stuff Orlando's doing. There's just like, I don't know. This feels like a team that's like, at least they'll be happy enough to where the team morale is not going to get low, and then like they start to have some turmoil. Like, I think that's way more likely with the Knicks and the Hornets. I feel like Orlando's that positive environment building. They're building instead of collapsing. And New York is building it to an extent as well. Charlotte's really the one that's collapsing. But then I think New York is always at risk to just have some stuff happen.
But I think like the Hornets, the Wizards, and the Knicks, they all in their minds are thinking we can push for a 10 seed. I think Orlando is content either way. Like if they bottom out, they're happy because they have a chance to get Victor or Scoot. And if they get a 10 seed by, the grace of God, they'll be happy with that too. Or if they get an 11 seed, I'm sure they'll be happy with that. Like they're just in a perfect situation where no matter what they do, as long as their young talent is on the court and thriving, they'll be okay.
Yeah, I think that's true for the front office, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the players on the court have higher expectations for themselves next year. I think the players to start the year are going to be, let's go make a postseason run. Front office probably are happy with as long as their guys are developing, but I would imagine that roster and that coaching staff are going to have the mentality of we're good enough to go make a postseason spot. Let's push for the 10 seed. At least. If you're Markelle Fultz, you want a 4 seed, so.
Hey man, I mean, it's possible, man. They might be a 4 seed. You never know.
Never know. Cleveland did do what they did last year, so
yeah, maybe they're.
What's crazy is Orlando, like they made the playoffs in 2020, so like that's a quick. Like if they push for a 10 seed this year, that's a quick turnaround.
That's one bad year, basically.
Yeah, they rebuilt very well. I will give them very good credit for that. That Nikola Vucevic trade is about as good of a return as you're going to get for a player of his caliber. And yeah, I mean, the fact that they have Wendell Carter and Franz Wagner from that trade is outrageous.
The only thing like keeping the Bulls from taking a complete L on that trade is the fact that I think Vooch drew in DeMar. If that wasn't the case, like that would be a complete like lopsided deal.
Sounds like Bulls fans hate him now though, but I don't think Wendell would be as far along as he is if he was still in Chicago.
No, he never would have developed the same way and at the same rate. He never would have got the same opportunity. He still wouldn't have shot as many threes at half the rate as he did last year in Orlando. There's no shot. Hindsight looks like it's a bad trade, but there's no way to compare.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense why they made it, especially given the pieces and having Zach and wanting to get back to being a winning team. Like, I'm not saying go back in time and they shouldn't have made the trade, but it's very clear that Orlando got more value out of that at this point.
Yeah. It like I don't think of it as a win-lose trades, it's kind of like, obviously a big win for Orlando. But then if I'm looking at Chicago, I'm like, it's not a great trade. It's not a terrible trade. It's fine. Like, you brought in a solid player, even though we had a down year last year. It helped you bring in DeMar, helped you keep Zach. Although, if you take DeMar's word for it, Zach was already going to resign, and that's where DeMar signed in Chicago in the first place, which probably does have a bit of merit to it. But either way, adding Vooch obviously makes your destination a little bit more of an appealing place to be. So, and even though Vooch was still a down year last year, like, he's still solid. It's just not what we expect from Vucevic.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Hopefully, I think he's one of those players who might be due for a bounce back year. It's just kind of tough that no matter how good he plays next year, nobody really has high hopes for Chicago. It's like, I think if he was gonna have a good season there, it should have been last year.
Yeah. I don't know. It's like Devin said, hindsight's always like very 2020 though with trades. I mean, the Bulls became a free agent player for like the first time ever. You know, they got Zoe, they got DeMar, and they made the playoffs, man, which is something that a lot of Bulls fans will tell you. We're glad that we were able to play postseason basketball for the first time in like half a decade. So I think they'll be fine. I mean, even if like it's just unfortunate really with Zoe's injury. Like, I think that's the main thing that's turning me off about the Bulls. But other than that, like, their roster's cool. It's fine. It's just like Zoe being out is like the big hit on them right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree. Good team, but Zoe's just so impactful.
I can't wait for this season to start, man. I can't wait to see, like, what does a league look like where like 25 teams are competing. I don't know what that looks like. Like, we've been so like caught up in like tank culture in the NBA trying to stop all these teams from bottoming out, and it's like now is sort of close to the first time where that's really happening. Like, for real, not really many people are trying to bottom out, and the only ones that are is like it's because they don't really got much there. Like, they'd probably be pretty bad even if they weren't trying to.
Yeah, especially through the first 3 months of the season. The biggest question then becomes what other Eastern Conference teams join the race, if any. Hopefully for the enjoyment of basketball entertainment, none. Some of them for the direction and benefit of their future probably should join and participate in the tank race for Wembanyama and Scoot and all the other great talent at the front of the draft. But at least for the first few months, there's not going to be many games where you can look at it and say, yeah, I'm not really interested in this game. Like, most games are going to be, this could be a good game. Now, obviously, you're still going to have your blowouts because it's the ebbs and flows of an 82-game season. But having 25 teams on paper that should be relatively competitive is going to be a fun start to the season for sure.
Yep, and every Wednesday night there will be like 14 games on, so you can pick and choose.
Facts. Definitely true. If you don't want to watch the Pacers play against Utah, well then you got other options.
Yes, sir.
You have you're gonna have like 10 other options, bro. So it's just like usually those cool league pass teams, but it's like I don't know how many league pass teams I'm gonna have if there's like 5 more interesting games happening at the same time.
I got Pelicans, Pistons. I might watch a lot of Kings basketball. Timberwolves and Cleveland. Those are probably like my 5 teams that I'm going to tune into a lot.
Yeah, that's
a lot, man.
Pretty much me too, but Orlando instead of Detroit. And then probably Atlanta as well.
Memphis, Pelicans, Detroit, man. Those might be the teams that I'm watching a lot.
Memphis is a good one.
Besides the Raptors, obviously I'm gonna watch the Raptors whenever I can.
Of course, you're gonna watch your team more than anybody.
Right,
I don't know.
unless they come out flat. If they come out flat and there's a better game on, hey, maybe not.
Say that,
we'll see.
You say that. I was still watching like 95% of Celtics games when they started out bad last year.
I'll be honest. I watched less of the Raptors in the second half than I did in the first half last year, which probably ruined my enjoyment a bit because I watched less games. But it's like I watched so much of the Raptors in the first half. I'm just like, I want to watch some random team tonight that I didn't get to see in the first half of the season. Especially once you watch so many games, it's like I know what Toronto are. I still enjoy watching them, but
yeah, I would have the Celtics on my main TV, and then I would have like a team that I'm interested in on my laptop, then I'll have another team on my iPad. Like that's just how I watch it.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that. I was doing that for a lot of games too. On busy nights, I'd be quad screening on League Pass and just timeout, commercial timeout in one game. Let me watch the next one. That's just how it was. But
I think my League Pass teams last year were like Cleveland. I think I watched a lot of Minnesota last year already too.
Yeah.
But those are like my main two teams outside of the Celtics that I watch a lot.
Oh, did we say Denver? Because I'm going to be watching Denver too. I don't know why I forgot about Denver.
I'm going to watch Denver, but that's a team that I would think I would watch more because I love Jokic, but I really don't. It's because they always start at such a weird time. It's like
that's true.
8:30, 9 o'clock tip. It's not the West Coast time, but it's not the Central Division. It's just so weird. So
yeah, that's true. I'm way too big of a Bruce Brown fan, so that by itself is going to make me watch Denver more this year.
Yeah.
To an extent, I think a lot of times, like random teams that I'm like, man, I really like watching them, and that's like one of the other teams I'm going to go to. I think a lot of times it ends up being Western Conference teams because it's like in the early window, I'm tuning into Toronto, but then I like the 10:30 window, like West Coast games, is like I'm going to tune into whoever I think is the most interesting that night because my team's usually done.
Yeah, definitely. I want to, especially early season 2, I'm definitely going to be tuning in to Dallas a lot too. I want to see how Christian Wood fits in. I think if he gets his minutes the right way and he applies himself, then he should have a very good season with Luka.
6 man of the year.
Keyword is should, but
I'm going to try to
I was thinking about that the other day. I don't even know who to put for 6th man because I don't even know who's coming off the bench. It's like, do I put Christian Wood or is he going to be starting 20 games? Is Tyler Hero going to be coming off the bench or is he going to be starting? Like, I don't even know what's happening with some of the top candidates. So it's like maybe I bet on Brogdon, although even then maybe they decide they want to start him before Robert Williams is back. Like, I don't know. It's a weird award this year. I feel like last year Hero he's coming off the bench. He's going to be good. That's the pick. But this year I don't even know who's coming off of the bench. So he could be in contention for another award.
Okay.
Put it that way.
Okay.
6th man of the year is going to be real hard to predict preseason. I think that one and most improved, a lot of times it's like you have no idea at all before the season, but like mid-season predictions, those can get really good.
Yeah, then you have a bit more of an idea.
Yeah, it's like with those two awards, like you can really pick anybody preseason, and it's like you completely strike out. It's like, oh, well, that's the nature of the award. I guess this guy was starting, or I guess this guy didn't take a crazy jump. But about halfway through the season, then it's like, okay, we've seen some of it. We've seen some patterns. Who's going to continue to pop off like they have, and those discussions get really cool.
Can't lie, looking ahead at the schedule, seeing Orlando against Detroit night 1.
Oof.
That looks like a fun matchup to me.
Yeah, that's going to be a 3-Point Weekly sponsored game. We're all tuning in.
No doubt. One of the first 2 games of the night, and I'm definitely not tuning into the other one, which is Washington, Indiana, over Orlando, Detroit.
Terrible. I just want to the first time Zion Williamson's playing this year, man, I'm having full eyes on that game. No attention anywhere else. I'm not going back and forth to anything unless it's on commercial.
Yeah, he does not play on the first 2 nights of the season, surprisingly. Does not play on the third night either. He plays against the Hornets on the fourth night.
I haven't seen who has the
Friday.
most I haven't seen who has the most national TV games.
Warriors
But
and Lakers.
okay. I mean that makes sense, but the Pelicans were on national TV like a stupid amount, but they had no Zion. So I hope they're still on national TV a lot now that there is the Zion factor, because I want to see that.
I hate national TV games, honestly.
Yes. I'm just fully on League Pass now, so it doesn't even coexist to me. I don't have any TV provider or nothing, so it's like national TV is just like, okay. It means nothing to me in Canada.
A lot of times they're real cool, but it's just the fact that there's always that one team every year. It was either last year or 2 years ago that it was the Pels, and then last year it was obviously the Lakers. Where there's some team that has high expectations, it's supposed to be super exciting, so they get a million national TV games, and then they end up not being good, and you're like, bro, I'm not watching this.
Yeah, and the NBA they don't flex those national TV games either.
Nope. Yeah, if they flexed games, it'd be so much better for the league. Last year, the Lakers should have just been flexed at every national TV game by All-Star break.
Honestly.
And as much as I like a lot of players on that team, when it was known that Zion was not about to be playing, the Pelicans should have been flexed out of most of their national TV games as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right, y'all. Do we have to get into the biggest drama of the week?
Y'all want
to? We have to get. What's the take on it?
I don't know what was said. Apparently, it wasn't nothing that was more than just basketball talk. So Draymond is dead wrong for punching that man in the face.
Yeah,
dead wrong for that. That's really all I have to say, man. I have an opinion. I don't really have a strong opinion on it. It's just I can't believe that happened. I can't believe it got out of the confines of the Golden State Warriors organization. That's really how I feel.
Yeah,
he's a Laker.
This point,
just an unfortunate situation as a whole. No one's benefiting from it other than the people that benefit off of drama. Yeah, I don't know.
The memes though, funny.
This is true.
Meme-wise, it's low-key kind of benefiting the fans because it's entertaining to say the least.
Draymond's just hurting himself though. That's all it is.
Yeah, he's definitely not.
He's
not
Laker,
helping himself
bro.
to get his max contract.
Oh,
that's
no
for
chance.
Sure.
No,
he's definitely not helping that.
he's gonna bring up a max contract again. They're gonna show him that video why should we give you a max contract? And this is how you act.
Jordan Poole is probably a little bit more deserving of that big money as well. I think we talked last episode about the fact that he's a decade younger, and is gonna be getting better. And Draymond is gonna want a multi-year max deal where he's not gonna be getting better.
Oh, his regression this is gonna be nasty. It's already low-key nasty now, but it's only gonna get worse.
So yeah, at that point, if you're in a place where you're regressing, and not only are you regressing, but then you're having public scuffles with your teammates who are also key players to the team, that's not a good look. Not a good look. He's a Laker. They're gonna pay Wiggs. They're gonna pay Poole, and Dre's gonna be a Laker if he wants that kind of money.
Yeah. Palinka would be dumb enough to give it to him.
That is crazy. He got an extension. It's absolutely crazy. I don't know how he's the guy who doesn't take any of the fall for what's gone on since they won a title, but kudos to him for somehow keeping a job, I guess.
Yeah.
Usually winning a title gets you like a free extension, but still, I think in the little pre-LeBron era, like after Kobe pre-LeBron, he drafted that team has some real good draft picks, but I don't know how close they were to being a winning organization before they kind of used their brand power and location to get the best player in the league and Anthony Davis, who was like some people had probably close to top 5 at that time.
Right.
It's like if Rob Pelinka was the GM of about 25 NBA franchises, it probably goes terribly. But you're attracting people to that team.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, they've drafted pretty well, but as far as some of their free agency moves and not re-signed and re-signed guys and some of their trades over the last couple of years, it's definitely not been great. It's definitely
Alex Caruso should be a Laker still.
Yeah,
that was
unexcusable. That's their biggest mistake. Undoubtedly.
Hey, low-key, they need Lonzo, man. Lonzo could save that team.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's better. You take Russ off that team, you put Lonzo on it straight swap. That's a better team, for sure. Assuming Lonzo's healthy, of course.
So serious, healthy Lonzo Ball skill set with that team, like he would fit. Just seeing the impact he has on that Bulls team, just defensively with just his pure presence. Like I think he could do some solid work back in LA.
You're telling me that if they had Lonzo and Caruso in the backcourt with LeBron, AD, and whoever they have at center, it'd be an amazing starting 5.
Mm-hmm. Hey, maybe I'd have them in the play-in. Maybe I wouldn't have them. Maybe I wouldn't have them at 11. Maybe they'd be at 9. Unfortunately, we can't live in the world of what ifs. I think it's sad that I had D Rose at the 13 seed. That makes me kind of upset. Every year, I've had this thing where I just want D Rose to succeed.
Everyone with a heart does.
Hey, low key, he should have never left the Timberwolves, man. Respectfully, D Rose on the Timberwolves was a vibe. I enjoyed him there.
I like the Knicks better, honestly.
Yeah, I probably like him with the Knicks more too. I feel like it's just easy to forget about it a bit because we didn't see him much last year. But hopefully he can stay healthy this year. He's had some really good moments with them.
All right, y'all. We got anything else for today? Any other burning topics?
Nah, man, I'm starting to lose my voice.
Again, this dude Tyrik is always sick, bro.
I might have to go to the hospital to see what's like. Is my immune system really that bad?
Yeah, I swear, weren't you sick like a month ago too? Like then you were sick like last week.
I was sick for like half a day. Like I had I don't know, it must have been like a really bad allergy flare up or something because I was fine by the end of the night.
I know there was that day that you didn't come to class and you were like, oh no, I tested negative for COVID. And then you were literally, you were cool by the end of the day.
All this past week, I was in the house basically because I was sick and it wasn't COVID. So I'm thinking it was the flu because I was down bad.
Bro's been MIA on me all week.
Sorry, bro.
You know how many times I had to go to class and go to work and I got there and I did not see Rick Knows Hoops in my vicinity.
Man, I'll be back this week. I'll be back this week. I'll be back in times.
But sometimes some things you just can't help. I feel like I just knock on wood, but I don't really get for real sick a lot. I'll have my allergies and occasionally in the winter I have a stuffy nose for a little bit, but I've only had the flu once ever never got diagnosed with COVID, so if I had it, it was asymptomatic.
Mhm.
But I'm never for real out of commission. Luckily.
Hopefully,
Yeah, I've been like that too for the most part too, but hope it continues.
the best for y'all, man, for sure. Yeah, next week is award predictions, right?
Next week is award predictions. Yes, award predictions and top 10 list, if that was still
Bruh.
of interest. That's what's currently on the agenda.
I'll probably make a top 10 list, but we'll see how deep we get into the episode.
Yeah.
By the time we're finished with the word predictions, I think I'm about to see some nasty agendas next week from this man Tyrik, bro. If I see MVP rankings and it's like number 1 is Anthony Edwards and number 2 is Darius Garland, it's about to be some nasty agenda.
All I'm gonna say is be here next week. You'll see.
What do we want to go for awards? Do we want to go top 3?
Yeah, let's do top 3.
Okay.
I think top 3 is good. That's I think usually in the conversation is top 3.
If you want to give some dark horses, that's cool too. But mainly top 3 is what we'll focus on.
Good. Sounds good to me. Well, if you guys are still here, we appreciate you guys tuning in to the episode. Be sure to leave your thoughts down below on our Eastern Conference predictions in the comments. And if you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel for our awards predictions next week. Shout out to Gabe, who we are going to give an early birthday to, as he is turning his birthday is in a few hours as of this recording. So early birthday shout out to him. And we will see you guys next week. Peace.
Peace.